Hi everybody, welcome to the Stratosphere Studio. It's Monday night, the 22nd of September, just past the autumnal equinox. Equal days and equal nights. Ooh. Getting away from summer, which I know drives a lot of people crazy, but having grown up in warm places my whole life, it's nice to, when you live in cold places, you want to be warm. When you live in hot places, you want to be cool. So I'm starting to get pleased with the position of the orbit as things stand right now. So here we are. It's Monday night. I hope everybody's doing well. I am happy to say that we got a relatively small but extremely enthusiastic response to our Gen Z call out from last week. So for those of you who did write in, I will be sending out like an invitation email. And if you're missed the show on Thursday, I'm looking to put together like a Gen Z only action force, going after Gen Z hard. It really impressed me when they saved the election. That had a lot to do with it. So if you're a Gen Z member and you're watching this, and it's just, I really just need your advice on things and suggestions, and make sure I don't step on any stupid landmines, that kind of thing. So if you're one of those ilk, you can write us at info@billwhittle.com and just put Gen Z in the header. And I'm looking forward to sending out that email. It's going to be really, really fun. And like I said, the enthusiasm was really high, so that got me really happy. I was talking about this on Thursday night, and I've been, how it is. There's like, obviously, when you watch, when you're scrolling Facebook or whatever the case may be, you get what the algorithm sends you, and it sends you more of what you watch, and the longer you pause on something, you get more of that. But I've been watching a lot of 9/11 hoax videos and moon landing hoax videos and Earth is flat videos. So I've been looking at a lot of those, and I'm genuinely like worried. There's a comment here I just wanted to nab before it disappears. Andrew DeLay says, Bill, just wanted to say how pleased I am that Kimmel is back on the air. I've been enjoying not watching him for so long. I want to keep enjoying not watching him. Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. Yeah, this is it's an awesome shirt. It's got Space Ghosts, got Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles. It's epic. So I don't know if I mentioned this last time. I might have been in the process of coming up with it. Did I mention 2-minute tutorials when we spoke last on Thursday, or did that come to me afterwards? Has Bill given Natasha an update yet? No. Natasha, however, is doing really, really well. I suspect she's probably watching this. I'm not 100% sure. What she is creating is unbelievable. What she's doing with Midjourney is unbelievable. And I was going to show it tonight, but she's putting together these things. I mean, I come home every day, and it's like, it's just amazing what she's doing with like fashion and music. It's crazy. And I was going to show a bunch of it tonight, but we didn't have any of it ready. I may go just grab one from YouTube in a minute, but I'll get to that in a second. We'll let it go for a little bit. So anyway, I think I was talking last time about, I was waking up and I was thinking, these poor kids, they've just been so deprived, and I was half awake and half asleep, and I was trying to see how many countries I could name, and I got to over 100. Yeah, I'm not going to do the don't be an idiot thing. I'm going to take some advice on this. Anyway, I was like, like I said, half awake, half asleep, and I often do memory exercises just to make sure that I've got enough oil running up here. Yeah, she is also making the relaxation videos, although not as many. She's been doing the other stuff, but she's got a new one that's about to come out. It's 3 hours. I took a look at it and tried to compress that yesterday. Yeah, we'll get to ABC. Anyway, I thought, I'd maybe just recite them, and I said, no, it's a bad idea. You're gonna look like you're, showing off, and she's right, and that's bad idea. But what I thought I'll do, and I'll run it past the Zoomer committee. But what occurred to me is that what we really need right now is like remedial education, and in the basics. Like, instead of starting with the small things, we start with the big things. And so I had this idea, and make it a subset of truth bombs, and call it 2-minute tutorials. And so what I was thinking for like a 2-minute tutorial would be like Geography 1. Right? Well, and would use the AI stuff. Won't go. I'm not worried about the boomers. I know how to talk to them, and I will. But what I was thinking is, you just start off with the planet, and it's like, okay, Geography 1. This is the Earth. This is the planet you live on. Let's freeze it right there. We can divide the Earth into two halves. There's the northern hemisphere that's above the equator, which is the line goes around the middle, poles at the top, or southern hemisphere is down below. But more useful is to talk about the eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. Needless to say, you'll see all of this. The eastern hemisphere is called the Old World because people started here in Africa and they migrated their way all the way, and all of Europe is it. We'll get to all of Europe and all that stuff. But that's the Old World. Then there's the Atlantic Ocean here, and then you've got the New World, and so on. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cover the basics. There are 7 continents in the world, 7, and here they are, and they're just going to highlight North in the Western Hemisphere, North America and South America. In the Eastern Hemisphere, we have Africa, Asia, Australia, Antarctica, and Europe. And Europe is a tough one because Europe is not really a continent. The Europeans don't really want to tell you that, but it's kind of a fiction. You can look at the globe and see every single continent. They all look contained and different, except Europe, which is essentially just a glorification of the fact that, well, they're all really just big islands. Get right down to a Roadrunner. Antarctica is its own country, and so is Australia. Australia is the only country that's its own continent. Antarctica is a special case. It's kind of run by all the nations all together. We decided we didn't want to screw that place up. And then I'm going to basically say, and now, ladies and gentlemen, now that we have these 7 continents, we have 2 main oceans, the Atlantic, which separates the east and west here, and the Pacific, which takes up half the planet. But since we've only got 2 minutes, we're going to go over the major countries. Just the major ones. If your country is left out, it's nothing personal, but just so you know, here we go. In North America, Canada, United States, Mexico. In South America, you got Brazil and Argentina. In Europe, you've got the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, Russia. In Asia, you've got China, Japan, South Korea, India. I don't know if I mentioned that on Asia. And then in Africa, I'll point out 1 or 2. They're hard to see. They're just pretty hard to recognize because, frankly, not a lot happens in Africa. That's that. 2 minutes. Boom. The Southern Ocean and the Indian Ocean. I don't want to. There's the Arctic Ocean. I'll probably cover the oceans. But the main thing is not to overload it, right? The New World is separated by the Atlantic on one side and the Pacific on the other. And then Geography 2 will start filling in some of the, some of the gaps. And then we'll start filling in more, we'll start getting into some of the other countries. Yeah, I've never heard of the Antarctic Ocean, although I don't know. As far as oceans goes, it's the Arctic, the Indian, the Atlantic, the Pacific. And I think that's it. We'll eventually get to things like the Gulf of America. Just to start off, we just want to keep it simple, and just wrap it up. Have a couple of visual jokes, and bazinga, we're on our way. I never watched that show, by the way. Yes, the Mediterranean, but we're not going to deal with that on the first one. Like I said, we're just going to be doing it separately. Um, and then we will be, then we'll do, here's North America, here's South America, here's, Europe, getting the Mediterranean there and all that stuff. So we just sketch them in, right? And you do the same thing for astronomy, you can do the same thing for physics, you do the same thing for biology, you can do the same thing for all of these things. Um, uh, I really think if you could get people to reliably find North and South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, Antarctica, and Australia, separated by the Atlantic and Pacific, that would go quite a long way. It is its own brand, um, and um, and then you just sketch it in, just sketch it in. Um, so I think that's easy to do, relatively easy to do, and I think it'd do some good. Are you getting ads again? I keep turning this bloody thing off, and my God, hang on, YouTube. That's just so annoying. This is all I ask, is just consistency. That's all I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? All right, hang on a second. Hang on a minute. Monetization on, doggone it, off, save. At least I'm catching them earlier. Now that should do it. YouTube, sorry about that. I don't know how to preset it like that. Anyway, we'll see. But yeah, I think it's a fun idea. It's easy to do with the AI, and there's all kinds of things we can do. One of the things I want to get done like real early on, if these 2-minute tutorial things, is how to handle a traffic stop. Yeah, a traffic stop would be really good. I was thinking about that a lot, because people just like panic. And it's like, hey, there's nothing to be afraid of. No one's going to hurt you. But there is one thing you do need to understand. Police are not going to ask you anything they don't have the power to do. So it can go this way, and then I'll just do a little scene with, with people, I don't have to give you anything, and then, car window gets smashed. Or it could go this way. How are you, officer? I'm fine. I pulled you over. I probably was going a little fast. You were doing 47 in a 30 zone. Wow, I didn't realize going that fast, but it doesn't surprise me. License and registration, please. Here you are, sir. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Be calm. He'll come back. If you tell him the truth, he might not give you a ticket. One of the reasons they ask you, do you know why you're getting pulled over, is because they want to know if you're telling the truth or not. But the one thing I can assure you is they are going to have their way. So if they tell you to get out of the car, you can either get out of the car or get pulled out of the car. And in the unlikely, I would say extremely unlikely event that the police have overstepped their authority, there's a place for you to fight that, and that is in court. You can't get a lawyer at a traffic stop. You don't get to sit there and wait for a lawyer. You don't get to call your mom. It's not a big deal. It's actually very simple. I have been pulled over, no less than 10 times, although it's been 20 years. So getting married will do for you. So, there you go. And just show them how it works. It's like, this is nothing to be afraid of, and it's nothing to hyperventilate over, and it's nothing you need to call mom or dad over. It's a real simple thing. So just have these things ready, and be polite. And if you think you're being screwed over for whatever reason, be polite and take it to court. I had when I was a limo driver, and I was a little lead-footed in that job. I got a ticket for making a right on red, but I had a green arrow. And the guys were behind me, well behind me when they saw me make the right turn. They pulled me over, and I said, "You know why you're pulling it? Why I pulled you up?" I said, "No, sir, I don't. I don't know. I don't have any idea." I said, "You made a right turn on that red light." I said, "Sir, there was a green arrow there." He said, "No, there wasn't." I said, "Okay." He wrote up the ticket. I signed it, and before I signed it, I said, "This is not an admission of guilt, right? No, it's just a receipt." I said, "Okay, I'll see you guys in court." And so I went back, and I went back and just took a series of photographs. Could have done it on Google Earth now. Took a series of photographs starting like where the police car was, showing that you couldn't see the green arrow from that position. I just took one here, and then I went down 10 yards, took another one, 10 yards, took another one. You had to print them out and do all this other stuff. And I just showed the judge. I said, "Your Honor, you can clearly see that this green arrow is here, but you can't see it from where they were when they pulled me over." Dismissed. All right, so there you go. All of this stuff is just real simple, you know. It's like tying a tie, and you know, I don't know if I'll be doing your laundry or anything, but yeah. So, you know, I'd like some feedback on something. I'd seen a good deal of not a good deal, a couple of episodes of oh, come on. What is that YouTube channel? It's not the Y-Files. What is it called? This, you know, this guy. Who's the guy? Who's the guy who's got hecklefish? I'm curious. Anybody know? Anybody? Anybody? Hello, Bueller. Anybody know that guy? Hang on, I'm trying to get my comments back again. Hang on a second. Hang on, it's just driving me nuts. Sorry. The Y-Files, right. Okay, so I saw a couple of episodes of the Y-Files, and I thought, man, the guy's good. And then I saw, you know, I don't know what, no, not over, no, not Doomcock, Hail Doomcock, the Y-Files. Somebody explained to me what he's doing, because it seemed to me like he was at least in the, and that's why I'm asking. I caught fragments that made it look like he was saying that the moon landing didn't happen. Is that true? Or did I just jump in on a part where he was being, you know, arch? Anybody know that? Because a lot of the stuff that he does is kind of out there, and the ones that I saw that were out there, I thought, well, he's kind of, you know, he's coloring within the lines. But then I saw this stuff that made it sound like, you know, NASA said this or that. It's like, you know, really, dude? What am I doing? I gotta get my act together here. He debunks most of the naysayers. Okay, so he's on the good team then, right? Because I think he's really, really good, and I think Hecklefish is hilarious, actually. Yeah, how to build credit, that's an idea too. That's actually a really good idea. I remember in civics class they taught us how to write a check. That's not likely to be a problem anymore. So he's not a moon landing denier, right? Because he does some interesting things, like, is the pyramid like a giant battery, you know, and they got copper in there and quartz and things like that. I was like, well, okay, I'll listen to that. But you know, I really am really alarmed about this unreasoning of America, you know, the age of unreason. We're heading there fast. Hey, Brian, good to see you. What am I doing? Why am I having such... There we go. Okay. Yeah, treeware. Yeah, so, you know, Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's good to have that dialogue back and forth, and obviously Doomcock has Harvey Cthulhu and Skull of Calderon and all that stuff. Okay, so I must have just caught the first part of it or something. Yeah, the FN Geek says, or assuming your audience is merely ignorant versus them being unintelligent. There's no way to rescue people who are determined not to hear it, but you got to do something because it's just really really hard to see how unreasonable people are getting. Sorry, hang on a second. Where'd it go? Yeah, Gare Bear says, what bothers me is the neo-Jew hating, Nazi-loving clowns being louder on the conservative side. Yeah. Yeah, Paula, what we saw, I've heard that Tucker Carlson is going to do an entire special on the moon landing being a hoax. Uh, that would be really pretty shocking, honestly. That'd be pretty shocking. Um, so, and the 9/11 thing is just some of the, thing about 9/11, it's so hard to prove the case of 9/11 is that there are so many moving parts, right? So many moving parts. For example, they recovered the passport of one of the hijackers in the 9/11 rubble and debris, and I admit that's a pretty big coincidence. But when you've got that many moving parts, you're going to have some coincidences. Um, yeah, R. Gross says Tucker's a joke and not a conservative. People need to understand that. I agree. I think he's just lost his way. I kind of think Candace Owens has lost her way. Candace Owens now is apparently conducting her own investigation into the Charlie Kirk thing, and there you go. Marisha says, I do think there's something to be said for the event happened, but the official narrative about it is not completely true. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen any key part of I haven't seen any key part of the 9/11 conspiracy that's. I mean, you know, it was 19 hijackers. Here's the thing about it: when people start questioning them about all of that, they say, "Hey, it's not our job to come up with an alternate theory. Our job is just to point out like inconsistencies." And I say, "Well, it kind of is your job to point out, an alternate theory, because if you're saying that the buildings were, were brought down by, uh, internal explosives, you kind of have to explain how that happened." And I was looking at this. I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know what it's called. But there's a slag of like molten blob of steel and concrete from 9/11, and it's open to a Bible verse. It's a Bible is embedded in this rock, and it's open to the verse that says an eye for an eye. Um, Steve Whoop says they got a passport but no black boxes. So this is the thing. The main thing to do with to go after with 9/11 is some people just don't get the physics of it. Like, no, look, passports aren't typically fireproof. There's no question that it's not the only debris that came out of airplanes, that came out of the buildings, but it's I admit it's pretty unlikely. But unlikely things happen when you have all of these things happening. Like people say, well, there's no airplane size hole in the Pentagon. The Pentagon is a fortress. Hit the reinforced side of the Pentagon. The World Trade Center is a internally supported with an external skin that is essentially not really load bearing. And you say, well, there's no way that an airplane wouldn't crumple up on the side of the World Trade Center because it's all made out of aluminum. It's like, well, an airplane, it takes off a 747 fully loaded, it's 800 pounds. Um, and um, and something holds that up, right? The wing spars are not made out of thin aluminum. I don't need to get into the whole thing. You get the idea. Yes, it hit the side of the Pentagon that was reinforced. Chance of that happening is 20%, which is 1 out of 5. That's like flipping a coin, having it come up heads or tails 3 times, but less than 4 times. So, yeah, of all the things I saw about 9/11 in terms of people saying, well, fire has never melted steel. I just saw this one guy. He was a blacksmith. It was the most amazing thing. It was so simple. He had this steel rod, and he put it in a vise. Just a guy. Just a steel rod, and he put it in a vise, and he's pulling on it. And it's like not going anywhere. Heats this thing up. Doesn't even get red hot. He just puts some a blowtorch on it for 30 seconds, and then he just that's boom. Yeah. Yeah, you get what I'm saying, right? I mean, it's not like the steel has to, and that's the thing, right? I mean, this is obviously the other thing. People think that that when they say that the fire caused it, it doesn't mean that the steel ran out of there in rivulets. It's going to fail before it goes to liquid, right? I mean, it's going to fail before it melts. Yes, otherwise it's just hanging up there in the sky by itself. That's right, it weakened the steel. That's all it did. I actually convinced somebody about 9/11 not being an inside job with one argument. I said, why is it that the first tower got hit, then the second tower got hit, then the second tower went down, and then the first tower went down? Why is that? Why isn't it that the first tower that got hit, why wasn't it first tower goes down, second tower goes down? Doesn't make sense. First tower lasted a lot longer than the second tower. Why? Well, because the second plane struck a lot lower and at a steeper angle. It's more weight above the damage point. And the more weight you have above the damage point, you got more pressing down on it. It fails earlier. It's a piece of cake. There's nothing to it. Nothing to it. I don't know how the internal explosive things really work. It's like, so they wired the buildings to explode, and then they flew a plane into it. They say that, well, it's a hard thing to do, fly the plane into it. It's not that hard. But wouldn't they have to fly the plane directly into the right level? Or otherwise, wouldn't there be explosives above the plane? I'm just wondering. Bucket 5 says steel loses strength at 1,000 degrees. Jet fuel can burn it up to 1,500. Yes, that's exactly right. And then there's the audio of the passengers. Yes. And then there's the fact that they're all on radar, that we have a good radar track on all of them. These guys say that the people on board these planes were flown to some remote location, and they were substituted for unmarked automated 767s, and it's just like boom, boom. So anyway. Here's a better question. Why would a terrorist group openly admit to doing it when they knew that they would be wiped out? Well, they didn't know that. That's actually a great point, Gra. They didn't think they were going to be wiped out. Osama bin Laden is very clear about this. Osama bin Laden, watch what happened in Afghanistan. He said, we just beat the Russians in Afghanistan. The Russians are much tougher than the Americans. If we can defeat one superpower, the other one will be easy. America's a paper tiger. All you have to do is just tap it, and it will just collapse. That was what he actually thought. He's on record of saying that. And he got that one wrong, just like the Japanese did, and the Confederacy did, and a bunch of other people did. So anyway, yes, that's right. That wasn't the first attempt on the World Trade Center. Now, FN Geek AZ says, I'm honestly sick of conspiracies. Way too many have been true lately. I have to admit, there's a lot of stuff that I would not have believed in 2001 that I'm forced to believe as a result of, 2020, 21. Yeah. Dave says, anyone who's ever played Flight Simulator knows how easy it is to fly into buildings. Yeah. So, anyway, it's going to take a lot of work, and I'm not going to convince anybody, but I will get the people who want to, not be crazy. That's basically who I'm going to be, advertising to. Um, MP7 2017 says, one thing the fuel burns at X people seem to forget is the size and height of the air column under the fire. Battle Smurf says we should talk about 9/11, Harrisburg and 3 Mile Island, and 125 air miles and Shakespeare, Pennsylvania crash site. Yeah, the crash site's a little tough too. That plane went straight down. So Mike says, explain Building 7 with 4 exclamation points. Well, the tallest building in the world fell on it, and it burned for 5 or 6 hours. And this idea that Building 7 was untouched is, just not true. You can't imagine the amount of tonnage that came down on that thing. So, and you got 5 hours of fire. This is the combination. It's like, it seems pretty clear from 9/11. It seems pretty clear that if it had just been the structural damage, it would not have fallen. None of the 3. And if it had just been the fire, none of them would have fallen. No, it didn't, says Mike. Well, I think it actually did. It wasn't pristine. The 2 towers came down. It was right next to it. Nonsense. Then okay, Mike, let me know what you think. Tell me what you think happened. I'm deadly serious. I'm not trying to be sarcastic or mean. I'm honestly asking you what you think actually happened. I'll give you some time to answer and reply. Serious as I can be. Serious as a heart attack. So give me your theory. I'm not being combative. I'm not being hostile. I genuinely want to know what you think. What you think happened. Because this is the part I always get there. Building 7 was the control center for the whole operation. Okay, so you're saying that the guys that controlled the operation of bringing these 2 towers down did it right next to the 2 biggest buildings ever to collapse in the history of the world? Because if I'm going to bring down something the size of the Sahara in Vegas, I'm not going to be standing right next to it when that happens. I mean, it seems like if you're going to have the control center for the whole operation, you might want to have that quite a long way away from this catastrophe that killed a lot of people. 2 planes hit 2 buildings and 3 buildings collapse? Yes. 2 planes hit the 2 biggest buildings in the world, and the debris from those buildings covered, 2 blocks? It took them a couple years to dig out that debris. There's photos of huge parts of missing after being hit by the North Tower. There you go. Radbot, can you pull up one of those if you can find it? So the question is, yes, Silverstein admitted they bought the buildings down. They brought the buildings down, pulled it. So who's Silverstein? And if they brought the buildings down, were there people? I'm genuinely asking. Were there people on board those airplanes, or do you believe that those people were disembarked, or that they were drones or something like that? Because when I hear about these motives, the thing I always get is Cheney and Bush wanted to start a war in the Middle East so that they could be rich. And I find that a little hard to believe, but let's just grant that case. Of the pilots, of the pilots that that flew those airplanes into those buildings, did those guys give up their lives so that Dick Cheney could be rich? I'm curious about the motive for all of this. All of the people that would be necessary to pull this off. What is their motive? I don't agree with it, but I'll grant you that Cheney and Bush were so evil that they're ready to kill 30,000 Americans, what they would have killed. So I'll grant you that. But what about the guys who flew the planes? Did they die to make Cheney rich? Marvin Bush was head of security for the World Trade Centers. This is a fun discussion. See, we can disagree, and I can learn something. Maybe I'll change my mind. Let's see. So let's just, like I said, I'll grant you this point. I'll just grant you the whole argument. Let's say that the Bushes are complete psychopaths, and they're ready to do all of that. And let's throw in the building owner too. Let's say that he owned the World Trade Center and he wanted it brought down. It can't be done by three people. So all of the people that have to be in on it, including the air traffic controllers and all of that stuff, are they dying for money? Marisha says Larry Silverstein owned the World Trade Center at the time. One argument says he was losing money on it. He collected double the insurance after they fell by claiming two separate strike counts as two payouts. Well, my response to that would be, first of all, that's pretty low. But secondly, Larry Silverstein wouldn't be the first person in the history of New York real estate to be losing money on property. And, you know. See, Argros says, is anyone here a structural engineer? Seems like a lot of people seem to know how well Building 7 was built. Yeah. Yeah, Andrew DeLay says, even if Bush is a psychopath, how many psychopaths do you need to pull this off? Seems like a lot. For example, a lot of people say that the Pentagon was hit by a missile instead of an airplane. But in order for that to be true, everybody driving on the freeway, because that freeway runs right past the Pentagon. So everybody driving on the freeway backwards in one direction and forwards in the other direction. There was actually no plane hit the Pentagon, says Eric Klein. What do you think it was, Eric? Do you think it was a missile? Okay, we'll get with it on Thursday, Marisha. I'm just picking this up because it's part of a larger thread on kind of content I want to do. So Eric Klein says there's absolutely no plane hit the Pentagon. Okay, so I'm curious, what was it? Because radar has that plane going down right there. And the person who officiated my father's interment at Arlington National Cemetery was standing on a hill when that airplane flew right over his head at 30 feet. Now, I don't know if you happen to be standing at Arlington at the same time, and you can testify that it was a missile, but everybody at Arlington would have had to been in on it. Scud missile hit the Pentagon. Only one engine was found. But not just a missile, a Scud missile. That's pretty impressive. Let me show you something here. Hang on a second. if I can find this. Yeah, there it is. Great. Hang on one second. Hang on one second. You'll get a kick out of this if you haven't seen it already. This is one of my kind of key pieces of evidence that I just like to hang on to. Hang on one second. We're having a fine time, right? Nobody's angry? I'm not angry. I'm not angry, and I'm not dismissive. I'm genuinely curious to hear this side, but there is something I do want to show. Hang on a second. Give me 1 minute. I got to download this puppy. There it is. Hang on. It's worth it. Okay. Yeah, it actually worked. How about that? I don't want an MP3. Sorry. Sorry. Hang on 1 second. My fault. I really love having actual discussions about things. So I really learn things. And I might be wrong. Yeah, I just want to make sure this is it. It sure looks like it. Okay. This is pretty small resolution because it's old, but I'll instruction. Hang on. I'll run it on YouTube, and then I'll run it on Twitch. Just give me 1 second here. This is for people who say, you know, where did the why wasn't there more airplane wreckage at the Pentagon? Well, Pentagon was essentially a concrete fortress, but that doesn't mean anything. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Again, I can just drag and drop this on the other one. I don't get why I have to go through all this trouble on this one. Okay, it should just loop on YouTube, and I'll make it loop. And then I'll enlarge it, then I'll bring it over to Twitch. Hang on. Yeah, this is a really small file. So this is a test of an F4 Phantom, which is about the size of a DC-9. And you'll see what it's about to hit is a concrete structure. So you tell me where the airplane went. Hang on, Twitch. So this is what happens with really high energy physics. So that wall on the left, the white wall, is probably a little thicker than the Pentagon wall, but not much. Take a look on the left side and tell me where the airplane goes. It is vaporized. And it's the same thing when United 93 went into the ground vertically at 550 miles an hour or whatever. Gone. It's just gone. And a Phantom is a big jet. Like I said, it's about the size of a DC-9. That's not a lightweight fighter. Just keep looking at the views because I just want you to see how it essentially turns to dust. Dust. I haven't seen this in a while. This should be a good view. It's a little overexposed. That's better. So what I'm saying is, things that appear to be so aren't necessarily so when you get into really high energies. That once you start dealing with that kind of energy states, the regular laws of physics just don't apply. What you would expect to see is not what you see. Oh, those lights come on. I was wondering what that was. Here it comes. Yeah, this would be the whoosh. It's dust. We get enough angles out of this. Now, the World Trade Center wasn't a solid block of concrete like this. The Empire State Building kind of was. The Pentagon certainly was on the reinforced side. And where's the jet pieces? So anyway, you get the idea. I think that's it for that one, so I'll just turn that off. Yeah, we don't need to see it twice. There's that. I'm almost done on Twitch. So all I'm saying is things can appear. They're just going to, some people say it's just isn't an F4, it's just some plywood. You're right. You can't convince people who don't want to be convinced, and it's pointless to try. All you can do is make the best case. Dave Electric says it's not a fair comparison. Why? Genuinely, why isn't it a fair comparison? Rocket sled speed isn't how fast the supposed plane was flying at. See, this is the kind of statement that interests me. How fast is rocket sled speed, and how fast was the plane flying at? This is, I'm genuinely asking. You can make that statement, but you make that statement without knowing how fast the rocket sled was traveling and about how fast the jet was traveling. There's no point in doing the test. By the way, by the way, to say it's not a fair comparison, I'm not 100% positive about this, but I am 98% sure that what you just saw there was a test of a commercial airliner being simulated running into the containment of a nuclear power plant. That's what that. I'm virtually positive that that's what that test was. They wanted to see what would happen if not intentionally, because this was back before 9/11, but they wanted to see what would happen in a worst case scenario. What happens if a commercial jetliner hits the containment structure of a nuclear reactor? Is that going to fail the reactor? DC-9's mean takeoff weight is 30 to 40,000 pounds heavier than the F4s, depending on the variant. Okay. You'll notice that it wasn't close, though, right? So anyway, I'm just spitballing. We'll go ahead and take the questions. So just something to think about. That's all I'm saying. Richard says, I think by fair comparison, it means it would have to be the same model, same speed, same wall material to eliminate variables. Well, I guarantee you the wall material was the same because that was the containment vessel. The problem with using an actual jet is that, number one, it's tough to fit a jet onto a rocket sled. Number two, we got lots and lots and lots of surplus F4s. And there you go. Yeah, 757 was doing about 530 miles an hour when it hit on 9/11. So, yeah, so, there you go. Oh, the Japanese government sponsored the test. That's fascinating. Roadrunner says I was right about the test. So, anyway, something to think about. If you had enough money, I'm sure you could take a 757 and crash it into into a wall of appropriate thickness, but I'd be willing to bet you'd find something, pretty similar. My point is, so the F4 was traveling at 480 miles per hour at the time of the impact, which means that the F4 was not moving as fast as. So the other airplane would have done more damage, but the F4 is a pretty ruggedly built airplane. You see, all I'm saying is, it's atomized. It's not vaporized. It's atomized. It turns to dust. And you can quibble about speeds and weights and so on, but the bottom line, the reason I show it to you is because the plane disappears. And let's just pretend that 9/11 never happened, and let's say that an F4 Phantom crashed into a wall, and somebody said, wait a minute, the F4 Phantom couldn't have crashed into the wall because where are all the parts of the Phantom? If the airplane crashed into the wall, then we should see airplane parts around, right? So put 9/11 off to the side. Doesn't matter what they compare as. What I'm saying is, according to the logic that people use, a common sense logic, can't really blame them. But essentially, it's like saying, okay, we got an accident, airplane F4 crashed into a concrete wall, and somebody says it's all a conspiracy because I don't see any airplane parts. Well, happen to have a high-speed camera on this one. Jebediah still cracking again, says, I don't know if September 11, 2001 was an inside job or all an outside job. I do know that some inconvenient questions have been raised about that day and not just questions regarding physics. Yeah, okay. Do I think the 9/11 report's 100% accurate? I don't see how it could possibly be 100% accurate with that many moving parts. But with that said, I don't, this whole thing, and the same thing with the Kennedy thing, it completely ignores the background of the people who traditionalists are accusing. When you read these things through the what calls the hole through the 5 rings of the Pentagon, the hole didn't go through 5 rings of the Pentagon. The hole only went through the outer ring. It didn't get into the 4th ring. Reddit has a picture of the wall. It is intact. The Pentagon wall is not intact. Government says a missile did hit the Pentagon. It was the same size and shape as the 757. So, anyway, see, this is the thing. It's like there's so many people make these statements, and I don't. I don't know how to back it up. You gotta provide some kind of evidence. I saw something that said that Muhammad Atta had packed a fuel gauge and some other things, and I thought, well, that's a little hard to explain. But then I thought, where did that come from? Why would he pack a fuel gauge? Well, that's the point. They planted the evidence on him. Muhammad Atta came and took flying lessons. All these guys did. And they weren't interested in landing or taking off. They were only interested in controlling the airplane during cruise flight, because most of the difficult stuff is landing and taking off. Starting the airplane is a big deal. Controlling the airplane once it's flying, boom. There you go. Good luck with truth bombs. Well, I got to give it an effort, man. I'll reach the people who can be reached, and the ones who can't. But we better hold on to some kind of group of people who can think both critically and rationally. Last independent thinker says, nope, they were not. What's that in reference to? Is that in reference to the fact that they were flight training? David Boutte says, I drive past the school where the barbarians trained every day. Yep. Anyway, it's going to be fun. It's going to be, like I said, it's triage. Yes, the flight training. So you're saying they did not get flight training? By the way, one of the things, yeah, I don't consider them to be hate groupies. I don't feel hated by them. I certainly don't hate them. One of the interesting things about this, by the way, is that the 757 and the 767 were intentionally made to have the same, pretty much exact same cockpit layout, so that cross training would be minimal, if next to anything. Um, so just looking it up here, it says 9/11 hijackers all received flight training in the United States at various flight schools, including Huffman Aviation and Florida Flight Training Center in Florida and schools in Arizona. Presumably, they say those because they've got the records of them there. These men, some of whom held FAA pilot certificates, that I didn't know, completed their training and obtained the necessary skills to fly large commercial jets and carry out the attacks on the World Trade Center. Okay, that sounds a little canned. That's an assertion. Atta and Al-Sehi received training at Huffman Aviation in Florida. They also did dry runs. Was it James Woods? I think it was James Woods that was on a test run. I'm pretty sure it was James Woods. He was on a flight and he saw these four guys acting really suspiciously, and I think he reported it. But I don't know if it was Atta he saw, but there'd been a number of people who were talking about that. I mean, all I'm saying is you can say they didn't go to flight school, and I'm saying this is the flight school they went to. So it's not like I can say yes they did, no you didn't, yes they did. That's the comment. That is the comment of the night. 7-Eleven was a part-time job. That Rad Robot, you win. Rad Robot, you win the internet, and 7-Eleven was a part-time job. Oh man, that is. I have to tell you, it's a great segue to get out of this quagmire. But honestly, that is the most brilliant thing I think I've ever heard about the subject. 7-Eleven was a part-time job. That's bloody brilliant. Ah, Y-Files does nearly the whole episode straight, then does the debunk at the end for 2 minutes. Okay, well, that's okay. Um, nice thing here, nice thing about this is we can agree to disagree. I don't know if you guys are uh, contemplating leaving, but I sure hope you don't, because I don't have any hard feelings about it. Uh, I sorry. There we go. All right, let's party like it's 1999. We don't have to worry about all this stuff. Now, in response to Jebediah, even if September 11th, 2001 was all an outside job, perhaps be thankful for some conspiracy theorists attempting to keep Big Brother honest. Yeah, let me just chip in here. The the entire COVID thing was absolutely manufactured. No question about that. None. Absolutely none. So I'm not establishment plant. I got 100% know that the 9/11, sorry, that COVID was a deep was a deep state operation. The 2020 election, there's no way that Joe Biden got 81 million votes. There's no way. And and a bunch of others. Uh, it's interesting that it's possible that the pyramids were able to store electricity. I think it's unlikely, but it's not impossible. There's the whole younger dryad theory that civilization's clock got reset and we lost 4,000 years of progress. I don't think anybody's making the case that the civilizations that might have existed before the younger Dryas had anti-gravity or anything, but you're knocking humanity back to knocking 5,000 years off the dial. It's entirely possible that things like some fundamental understanding of electricity existed before then. I don't know how long. I gotta think that reinforced concrete is going to last longer than cut limestone. I imagine that the freeway overpasses, for example, will be around for a long time. Now I may be wrong about that because I'm not a structural engineer. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Jebediah. There's a lot of things that bear looking at. I think the Federal Reserve is a swamp of irregularities. I'm trying to think of some other things. There's a bunch. Yes, last independent thinker, Roman concrete is amazing. Absolutely. Roman concrete is amazing. Didn't they? I have to be careful about these kind of things. I've heard people say that we still haven't been able to get concrete as good as that. I'm not 100% sure that's true, but I will say this. Didn't they discover that they put blood in there or something? Is that just chrome? Because Roman concrete was phenomenal. It's still there. Yeah, so we're all friends. See how it works? Nothing to it. We can agree, disagree, give me some things to think about, and we'll take it from there. How long concrete lasts? Look at Chernobyl area on stuff last. Yeah. Volcanic ash. Somehow that feels absolutely right to me. Andrew Lay says Roman concrete has an incomplete mix that helps it self-heal. Connor Klaus says we can make better stuff now, it's just not as cheap. Wow. That's epic. Okay. And the steel used on the Titanic was extremely brittle at cold temperatures. Okie dokie, member forum. Self-healing comes from large chunks of limestone left in it, so water seeps in it, mixes with it, and seals it. Geniuses. All right, here we go. Yeah, luckily Rome had plenty of volcanic ash at Pompeii. I'll bet they probably had more ash than they knew what to do with. Gare Bear asks, talking about Pompeii, too soon? Yeah, man. I don't know. It still stings. Pyramids in Giza wouldn't look so nice if they were in the Amazon. That is a great point. Rad Robot, man, you are knocking them today. I never really considered that before. Absolutely had not considered that before. One of the reasons why the pyramids have lasted so long is because vegetation hasn't had a chance to prime apart. And John Eden comes in for the super chat. $99.99 super chat from John Eden. Again, the man is a legend. He's a legend around these parts. Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Very much. Always. Okay, looking around here, let's see what we got a Marusha Dark, we got a Ray Juarez, we got a Ian Nolan, we got a Road Rider, we got a Broke College Student, we got a Capital G Geek, we got a Jacob Belchuk, we got Eric Blake, we got another Marusha Dark. Yeah, we can do those, I think. Let's see, get started here. Marusha Dark topic: spooky season. Bill recently watched Gary Oldman's Dracula and Tim Curry's Legend. Both still hold up surprisingly well. In terms of newer stuff, I would recommend The Devil and the Blacksmith as a really great film. No doubt Nat would let you watch that one, but I doubt Nat would let you watch that one, but maybe someone in the audience would enjoy it. Also, Wednesday is really great if you're into the Addams Family. Besides Aliens and Rocky Horror, which we all know by now, what are some of your other favorite horror shows and movies? Also, what does Natasha generally think of Halloween? Are you two planning on dressing up and doing anything for spooky season? Figured I'd ask now so you have plenty of time to plan your costumes as it's just around the corner. We want to find something that is as culturally inappropriate as possible. That's taking some research. Fun fact, did you know that Halloween is regarded as New Year's Day on the pagan calendar called Samhain? I've heard of Samhain. Or Mid-Autumn. So when the barrier between the mortal world and the spirit world is at its thinnest, which is where all the spooky stuff comes from. Yeah, I did know that. Later holidays related to it include All Souls Night, and Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, all related to the spirits of the departed. Yes, and not commonly known, it's not unknown, it's not commonly known that the day after Halloween is All Saints Day. So it's like the devils come out and play, and then God puts the hammer down. Atomic Conqueror with a super chat says the Romans got lucky with Mount Vesuvius. That ash is great in concrete. We're still trying to replicate it. I say we put a nuke under Vesuvius and go get ourselves some concrete. Imagine they had some fair amount of volcanic dust up in the Pacific Northwest in 1980. P7 2017 says it's kind of comforting on some level that people are still arguing over who shot the Red Baron, whether the rivets or the plates failed the Titanic, and still takes 7 days to make a jelly bean. I read a pretty thorough breakdown of Red Baron being killed by Australian anti-aircraft battery that I thought pretty much closed the case, especially when you get into things like the bullet trajectory and so on. Yeah. Remember the Maine. I will. Yeah. All right. And Marusha Dark helpingly supplies a link to how to make Roman concrete in case you're interested in doing that. Snoopy shot down the Red Baron. He did, Colonel Angus. He did. Was it the Royal Guardsmen? Because, as you know, Snoopy fired once, then he fired twice, and that bloody Red Baron went spinning out of sight, if I recall correctly. Okay. So as far as Halloween goes, I'll tell you what I thought was a great movie was The Witch. I thought it was just terrific. That movie was really... He's my favorite filmmaker now, David Eggert. He's just my favorite filmmaker. I thought it was really unnerving. I loved The Lighthouse. The Lighthouse is one of my 5 favorite films. The Lighthouse is just absolute. It's one of those movies when I really couldn't bear to think that it ended and that there wasn't another one to follow. I thought The Lighthouse was fantastic. Didn't think much of The Northman. I did like. I might, Mike. You never know. I might. Good night to you and to your lovely looking. I can't tell from the tiny little avatar, but son or daughter, your child. Anyway, congratulations. And thanks for playing along and being a good chap about it. Come on. Nosferatu, I thought was just really terrific and really gave me the creeps. I can't remember the last time I was really scared in a movie. I remember being a kid, when I was a little kid, and I don't know how, but I saw this about a week ago for the first time since 1968 or whatever it was. There was a Dracula with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, and when Dracula gets caught in the sunlight and he turns to dust and his hand turns to dust, I saw that in the theater as a little kid, and I had nightmares for weeks after that. Don Sterling says The Northman was a masterpiece. Yeah, I didn't dislike it. I don't know, maybe it just wasn't quite as as supernatural as the other three. Um, so I like that. Um, I've heard Weapons is really good film. It looked terrible, but I've heard it's actually really pretty good. Um, yeah, I kind of think Frankenstein is a pretty scary movie, to be honest with you. And there's a new one coming out. We'll see. Um, I'll tell you what did creep me out a lot was the Terror. And I liked it especially because it was based on a historical expedition. They added like a snow monster, but they had great actors. In fact, they had the actors who played Julius Caesar and Brutus in Rome, which was a 2 season series on HBO back in the early 2000s. Um, and it was great to see those two guys again. And I can never remember his name. I can't believe I forgot his name because he's got to be one of my favorite actors. It just came to him late. Who is the guy who played the lead in Chernobyl? He was Chernobyl is the best thing I've seen on TV. Chernobyl is the best thing I've ever seen on TV. Um, Colonel Angus says, interview with the vampire terrified my German Shepherd. He didn't know people could bite. Jared Harris. He's the son of Richard Harris, isn't he? Um, Jared Harris is phenomenal, phenomenal, and he also was in the Terror. The Terror is really, really, really good. In fact, you could make a pretty compelling case that the Terror would be excellent even if you took the monster out of it. I guess you kind of need the monster, but the the expedition had a name and it's eluded me. It was a major expedition mounted to the North Pole. It was HMS Terror and HMS. Don't tell me. Come on, Billy, you can do it. You can do it. It's another kind of macabre name. HMS Terror and HMS. Come on, come on. I forget. Anyway, two big ships, big expedition. HMS Bodie McBoatface. Big expedition. They got trapped in the ice up there for 3 winters, I want to say. Tried to make it overland. Got close to making it. I can't recommend it. Erebus. That's it. Thank you, Kirk. Erebus. Yeah. Um, and they found both the wrecks, and the wrecks are in pristine condition. They're mint condition. They've been in cold water, uh, and um, and I actually tracked that story down in real life, um, and it's an amazing story. I read 3 books about that expedition. Yes, they got lead poisoning from cheap canned food. And HMS Gilligan, okay. That minnow. You know, if the professor could build, um, radios out of palm leaves and bamboo and coconut husks, I would imagine it wouldn't have been that difficult to repair the boat. But, I'm just saying. Let's see. I saw The Hills Have Eyes on the campus out on the lawn at the University of Florida. They ran like 3 or 4 horror movies together. Started about 9 o'clock at night. Then they ran a short of mine after the first one. That was the first time I ever saw a movie that I made in front of a bunch of people. And then they ran something else. And then right around 1 o'clock in the morning or something, they ran The Hills Have Eyes. And that was kind of a fun movie. The professor was an electrical professor, not a mechanical engineer. I loved the professor. I loved it. Yeah, The Thing was pretty scary too. Anyway, the only movie that really genuinely scared me that I can remember being like really, really uncomfortable in a movie theater, I saw The Exorcist when I was a young kid. I was probably 11 or 12, and I have to tell you, the scariest part of The Exorcist for me was her getting the spinal tap. I just couldn't handle that, man. That was nasty. Um, so, yeah. There's a movie made, a feature film made about Kon-Tiki, which was pretty good. Pretty good, about Thor Heyerdahl and Kon-Tiki. Built a raft to show that Polynesian peoples could cover, half the surface of the earth in a raft made out of reeds, I want to say. Yeah, that was pretty good film too. Anyway, nothing particularly stands out. I went as a spaceman a couple times. We generally don't get dressed up. We generally do host kids at the house. After COVID, attendance went way down. For a couple of years, it was building back up again. I miss 70s, 60s, and 70s Halloween. Eric Blake says body horror is always the thing to scare me, even in the original Disney Snow White, the Queen transforming into a hag before our eyes. Speaking of which, The Fly, Jeff Goldblum movie is a really disturbing film. That's really kind of creeps you out. So anyway, moving on. Ray Juarez, Stream Help Redux. Hey Bill, no question tonight, just some suggestions for you. The opsproject.com forum thread simultaneously on one computer. Suggestion one is a link how you can run 2 instances of OBS at once to stream to YouTube and Twitch without fighting Streamlabs. Let me just explain why we don't do that. I'm sure I can do it. It's just that I don't know if I can turn the stream on YouTube midstream. So on Twitch, we run a pre-run show, and to me, it's as much of the show as, and in fact, virtually every episode, it's the best part of the show. So we've changed the music a bunch over the years, but on Twitch, we run a 15-20 minute pre-roll, and then we have our 2 theme songs, which is the Buckaroo Banzai theme song for Stratosphere Studio, and I Know a Place for Stratosphere Lounge, and when that streams to YouTube, they just shut it down immediately. So that's why we had to do 2 streams. I start the Twitch stream generally anywhere between 10 minutes to 6, more like 5 minutes to 6, sometimes right at 6. But that's why the YouTube stream starts around quarter after, 15, 20 after, something like that, the latest. There you go. Now, Fiery Waco says, what scares me? Jimmy Kimmel being preempted on 65 ABC stations tomorrow night. I heard that he was reinstated. Does that mean that that those affiliates are not going to carry him? Or is he all the way back? Eric says, I'm getting to that in my question. Okay, I'll get to that. Sasslayer says, or SA Slayer says, hey, Bill, would you agree that socialists have seized the means of movie production? Yes, they did it in the 1960s and 70s. And their reign of terror is over because the cost of filmmaking goes down and down and down, and the audiences aren't where they used to be. It's almost impossible to recover a $65, $70 million movie budget. The only things that are surviving are like the big tent poles, and those guys are going out of style. The MCU gets weaker and weaker every time they put something out. There's very, very few original blockbusters. In fact, I can't think of an original blockbuster that really just came right out of nowhere and just knocked everything out. That whole giant middle of movies is pretty much gone. Are we still talking concrete? Oh, we are talking about bombs and crashes, and I'm telling you, man, this AI video is. I can make AI video look absolutely good enough. I just can't do everything with it yet. But again, every week new software comes out. It will get there. It'll get there soon. And when the fusion of AI video output gets mixed with the precision of CGI camera placement and repeatability of structures and so on, then it's desktop feature filmmaking. I think we will have. I think we'll have Lawrence of Arabia on the desktop in 3 years. And I mean soup to nuts, 3 years. And we'll be able to go with, we'll be able to get most of it much sooner than that. I can do a really, really good trailer right now. I mean, a really, really good trailer right now. So you're probably asking, why am I not doing that? Well, I got a bunch of airplanes that are on final here. They're intercepted the localizer, and they're just stretched like a string of pearls out to the horizon, and I got to move those things. But I've only realized, it's like, no, you got to get this membership thing up and running. Otherwise, it's going to be just endless, frantic scrabbling. So there you go. But yeah, we're getting there. Okay, so back to Ray Juarez. Suggestion one, link, you can do it, such to edit your restrictions. Yeah. Add a banner to the top or bottom. So, Ray, I thank you for all of the help and all of the trouble you went to on that. It hasn't been a technical issue so much as it's a platform issue. Twitch lets us stream the copyrighted music and doesn't bother us, but YouTube does, and I have not found a way to do it. Now, I suppose what we could do is, I'm not crazy about this idea, but it's not like we haven't done it before. We could take a vote on it. We generally have 40 or 50 people in the Twitch stream. What I could do is, I could stream the walk-in just like usual for Twitch, and then right at that moment when we're ready to cut to the show, I could just plain stop the stream, turn on YouTube, start the stream, and everybody would have to refresh their browsers. And you may not even have to do that. That might be a solution. That I got to see how the Eric Lake says no. Okay, well, that's the end of that then, I guess. It doesn't feel right to me, but it's not a super big deal. Bill, for the dual streams, you can just end the Twitch stream after the walking music without losing the chat. That's what I said, and then start them both at the same time. Keep it on. Eric, I'm not talking about taking it off of Twitch. You're misunderstanding. What I'm saying is we roll the pre-roll on Twitch, and then at the point at the end of either Petula or Buckaroo, I stop the stream, I flick the little button that turns it onto YouTube, start the stream again, and it goes out to YouTube and Twitch now. You see? That would work. Think it over. And don't have an aneurysm over it. We'll figure it out. Okay. Firewake. Make AI copies of all the walk-in segments. We'll see. You will not believe what Natasha is doing. You will not believe what she's doing with Midjourney and animation. It is. I come home every night and it's like she's done 4 months worth of work overnight. It's absolutely brilliant. It's so good. I'm going to include a lot of it in the colonies because it is completely different from what I'm doing. It's all like these super hot chicks in these fashions that she's designed. In fact, I'm gonna grab one just to show you before we move on. I'll get to all the questions tonight. Give me 1 second here. I'm just gonna grab one. And her newest stuff is not online yet, but you get the idea. I'm just going to grab one just to tease you guys. Oh, turns out there's a ballerina named Melnikova. Let's try. It's here somewhere. There's deep relaxation. That's her first channel. Where's she also has an art channel, which I will share in a minute. Hang on a second. Where is it more? Here it is. Here it is. Which one of these do I like? Oh, I like all of them, honestly. All right, I'll just grab one, and then I'll do like an extravaganza next time. This is the one she just put up. Yeah, this is just amazing. Hang on one second. Oh, almost there. Hang on. She not only did the visual, she did the music on this as well. And I'm going to put, like I said, I'm going to put together like a whole 3, 4, 5 minute demo. But I just go home every night and it's like, man, amazing. So this is not the latest thing my wife did, but it's the latest thing she posted. Can I just drag it in like a? No, I cannot. All right, you bastard. Hang on a second. Media files. Yeah, if I made stuff like this, I'd be divorced. Okay, now here you go, YouTube. I'll loop it, and I'll just drag it into Twitch, and then we'll just have a quick look at it, and then we'll get on with questions. Back with stuff like that, I'd be in big trouble. But that's just spectacular. It's just, oh, it's just the software. It's like, no, it's not the software. It's not. Guys couldn't hear me? Because the music was too loud, I guess. Okay, doesn't matter. Anyway, that was that, and that's just a preview because I've got some really amazing stuff coming up. So that'll be fun. Turn down the volume on the video. I can't control it. I can't hear it either. So anyway, back to the questions here. Ian Nolan. Bill, I'm glad you could so clearly see what's going on with everything Charlie Kirk is pure spiritual warfare, which, as we've discussed before, is indistinguishable from fifth generation, i.e. information warfare. In a recent interview with Douglas Wilson, Charlie Kirk explained that his effectiveness with Gen Z was because religion is upstream of culture, which is upstream of politics, and he could address Gen Z at all those layers and also wouldn't neglect any one layer in favor of the others. It was fully vertical integrated philosophy. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I know you've got your own thoughts on the metaphysical and respectful differences with Christianity, but given your passion for reaching out to the younger generation, have you thought about how and where these things need to be integrated? That's a great question. Well, I certainly can't tread the same path that Charlie trod. He's a much more religious person than I am, and 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 that's great. Um, I know Matt Walsh is. Ben is obviously a devout Jew. Mike Knowles, Mark Dice, all of that. To answer your question, I don't feel qualified to be doing a lot of bringing like a real theological element into what I'm doing. But I will be definitely flavoring this thing with all of this stuff with a sense that with a sense of the shortfalls that I've found in sheer materialistic view of the universe. I am I think I know certainly in things like the colonies I have a lot more freedom to do things like showing people going to church and things of that nature. I'm trying to think where it will most likely manifest itself. I mean, just for example, the flat Earth people believe that there's this lens-shaped firmament over the Earth. And they talk about how beyond the ice wall there's all these other, planets and all that stuff. But those are contradictory terms. They either, some people on the flat Earth thing believe that the firmament is like a crystal containment, and so there's a lot of incongruity there. But in either case, that is a very small view of creation. The idea that Earth is just this pancake that's sitting there hovering somehow with a dome over it, and that's all there is. That is a very small. Yeah, Coffee Schnatto's got that just right. That's a puny god. The just the size of the. I think I think the best argument for the existence of God is the biological response to beauty. I mean, you can certainly make a good, strong materialistic case for why you'd have a biological response to violence, a biological response to sex, and you come up with a pretty solid and reliable explanation for those things. But beauty is that's a real mystery. Not just how humans appreciate beauty, but why is the universe beautiful? Because it is. There's no question about it. There's not a person that can look at anything like it. For those of you who have never seen a really pitch black sky, you have no idea what you're missing. It will suck the air out of your lungs. But when you get into the to the shape of these galaxies and these nebulae, they're just astonishingly beautiful. And they don't have to be. They could just be giant cosmic turds. I mean, they could just be lumps. If you know what an irregular galaxy looks like, usually they're dwarf galaxies, but Milky Way has two dwarf galaxies orbiting it called the Magellanic Clouds, Large Magellanic Cloud and the Small Magellanic Cloud. If you take a look at the Large Magellanic Cloud, it's just a blob, and there's nothing particularly beautiful about it. But when you look at the structure of spiral galaxies and all of this stuff, it really it just boggles the mind, and the beauty of animals and I'm not saying that evolution can't get you to something like a swallow or something, but why does it? What is it about something that is well designed, either through a creator or through evolution? What is it about something that has this natural beauty? Why are mountain landscapes beautiful? Why? Um, the I've never I've never seen like a really stunning mountain range or something like that. Just takes your breath away. Uh, I can look like the Grand Canyon will definitely get a gasp out of you. But when you look at the Grand Canyon, the first thing that you just feel it. Then of course you can say, well, this is the erosion of the Colorado River over the course of millions of years, and that's all true. I have no doubt about that at all, none. But why does it hit you like that? And not just the physical things, the motions, just the circular motions, and just watching a planet in an ellipse is beautiful. Just a ball in an ellipse has a beauty into it. Lord Bio says it's mathematics, the universal language baked into our evolutionary preferences. Yeah, I mean, I see where that comes from, but why is mathematics beautiful? And why do we have that reaction to it? It has there is a transcendental, non-intellectual reaction to the things in the outer world. Yes, there you go, Lord Biosky. Golden ratios, angles, etc. Well, the golden ratio is pleasing to the eye, and the golden ratio consists of a rectangle within which you could cut off a perfect square. And what does that do? Does that leave two perfect squares? I forget. But I remember. I used to remember what the thing does. And then when you keep doing this, you get the that perfect arch, and the what is that? Fibonacci sequence. All that stuff. Mike Churchill says the answer, I think, is that matter alone serves no purpose, but organized matter means everything. Yeah, one of the leaves a rectangle with sides in the golden ratio. That's right. So then you can further subdivide. That's right. You can further subdivide that thing. Donald in Mathematics Land Roadrunner is a brilliant piece of education. Should be shown in every high school in the country. Brilliant. And then you start seeing what happens when pi unwinds and all of this stuff. It's pi has always puzzled me because Lord Bass says much of these mathematics apply to molecular shapes and functions. Pi has always puzzled me because everything else seems to be so elemental and simple and elegant. E equals mc squared and Maxwell's theorems. They're very simple. They could have taken blackboards to fill, but they don't. And then along comes pi, which is just so. I know that there's a specific mathematics term for irrational numbers and stuff, but there's something about pi that just seems like what? Roger Amjad says, that's the word I was looking for. Mathematics is perfection, and there is only one answer, and it's not racist. That's right. Dave Olson says, Matt Jeffries was an aficionado of the golden ratio. He designed the Enterprise and the D7 according to that. I knew about the Enterprise, didn't know about the D7. Bios reminds us to celebrate Pi Day on March 14th by eating pie. And the fact that pi is infinite. Pi is like the mule in the Foundation trilogy. It's like it comes along and just kind of says, yeah, well, would have been nice if it was 3, but it's not. Strange. Area 51 says, beauty is God's way of reminding us of his existence. See, I really do feel that. And I can understand, I still have a toe in the materialistic universe, I can understand evolutionary reasons for all of these things, and I certainly, I would say extremely well, understand the the atheistic worldview. I understand it. I don't think I have any misconceptions about that. I understand how evolution works, uh, and and I understand timescales, and I understand large numbers, and I understand all of that stuff. But you're still left with something, and just because that is not, I was going to say just because it's not testable in a lab, but but it but it is testable in a lab. You get that dual slit dichotomy. That's that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense on our macro level. It doesn't make nothing makes sense on the quantum level, but in the real world, it doesn't make sense. And that's somebody's. There's a message in that experiment. There's a message. I'm telling you, it's an Easter egg for creatures that are smart enough to figure it out. There's something going on there. And this business about observers changing the result, and then you put a camera in there and it goes the other way, and then you unplug the camera and it still goes that way as if there's an observer. That is like a strobe light that's coming at you from the irrational and from the unexplainable. It's just like a beacon. It's just saying, hey, 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 down here, look, look. It's not only stranger than we imagine, but stranger than we can imagine. So, Eric Blake says, math promises a world of perfect order, and then we get pie in the face. Well played. So, in any event, that to answer your question, Ian, I think this. I think the saddest thing about let's just say the Richard Dawkins view is how the two things about and I'm not pinning this on Dawkins. Dawkins represents millions, if not billions, of people. But number one, there is a barrenness to that worldview. But much more importantly, to me, is that there is an arrogant certainty about it that they don't have any business being that certain about. This we've got it all figured out thing. It's all just chemical reactions and what did that guy Yaron, whatever his name is, we're all just a series of chemical algorithms. It may be true, but I don't want to live like it's true. And one way or another, we'll find out. That's essentially pretty close to Pascal's wager, but I don't find to say it doesn't feel right. And I think that's really kind of the point. It's like I got to the point where I was smart enough to realize you don't need one for the other. And then as I got smarter, I began to think, no, you kind of do, in ways that I have a hard time explaining, but that most people feel as well. And it's not got anything to do with fear of death or anything. I got over that quite a long time ago. Kirk's Bamboo Bazooka says, yeah, if those guys added 10% more humility would boost sales. So I guess to answer your question, Ian, is I'm not going to go down that reductionist hole. As we get more and more into AI, I find consciousness and the entire theory of consciousness is pointing to unexpected places. So I'll just close this question by saying this: science is much, much, much more interesting and nuanced now than it was in 2000. Much more. Quantum information holography and simulation theory and all of the discoveries that the James Webb Space Telescope have basically shown that the standard model is just wrong in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas, That all stuff seemed to be pretty much locked down by the 90s and 2000s and even later, and then it just suddenly got a lot more interesting. And there you go. Wow, Just Action Video says, I love your authentic faith. Keep going and sharing your journey. It doesn't have to be Charlie's journey to be real and authentic. Inspiring. We like the design because we like the designer. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where else to go but that, you know. This and there is, if you've ever seen, and certainly Lord Bios knows this, but if you've ever seen the molecular structure of a flagellum, these little tails that these microorganisms have, it's a bearing. It's a bearing, and there's no other way to describe it. It seems the whole thing seems. I mean, the world tends from order to disorder, and obviously life is an exception to that rule of entropy, and it's not illegal in terms of the second law because the energy that allows the order to come from disorder, that there would normally be a net energy loss, but the energy that makes life happen comes from the sun, so it's a little isolated case of sort of anti-entropy. But nevertheless, you look at some of these biological mechanisms, and it's just, you know, you see these things walking along these protein strands, carrying this giant protein with them to some place it needs to go. You start having to ask yourself, at what point does probability become less likely? And then there's the entire forget even about things like protein folding and all the rest of that stuff. There's the laws of the universe argument. Namely, if the Big Bang had happened millionth or thousandth of a second differently or whatever, all the laws of physics would have been different, and the conditions for the formation of life in terms of water and complex molecules would have been too hot, or the strong nuclear force had been a little bit stronger, or you know, if all of this stuff, what you really do have to ask yourself. I understand the anthropic argument. So the anthropic argument is just, let's say this. Let's say that the chance of the Big Bang producing a universe that can harbor life, forget intelligence, just life, just the laws of physics that allow life to happen. Let's say that the chance of that happening is 1 in 300 million billion. Scientists would argue, well, it's very unlikely to win the lottery too, but somebody wins the lottery. But if your entire theory is predicated on a 1 in 300 billion chance coming up, maybe there's a better theory. You know what I'm saying? I get the anthropic argument. I get the argument that, well, yes, it's unlikely, but it had to have happened because we're here. But comes a point when you have to ask yourself, well, at that kind of probability, is this the most likely theory? I don't know. Like I said, I think some scientists have a real aversion to God because their fundamental curiosity is what drives scientists, and I think it really bothers scientists. I think the idea that there is knowledge that is off limits. It's not. I know scientists know that they don't know everything now, but scientists believe that everything is knowable, or virtually everything is knowable. And the idea that there's this entire domain that is off limits, in other words, this is what God does in God's realm, I just think the idea that they're not allowed to know that really bothers them. Really bothers them. That they're not, you can't go through this door. You just can't. I agree with the P7. I just agree with you. Anyway, there you go. Road Rider. Just real quick, Kurtan said, if you look into the split brain experiences, we know that consciousness is not contained within the brain. In a very similar way to near-death experiences, our consciousness is outside of our body. My friend Jim has been talking about this for 4 or 5 years now. He was the first person that told me that he thinks consciousness does not reside inside the brain. And I said, So that means that the brain essentially is a modem, right? He said, yeah, that's a great analogy. That's exactly right. Yes, your brain is a modem. It connects you to consciousness that doesn't exist inside the brain. And then there's all these things about these little tubules in the brain that seem to be showing quantum activity and all kinds of cool stuff like that. And that's a whole week of shows right there. But anyway, you get the idea. Moving on, Road Rider. Hey, Road Rider, good to see you. Ian, now that is the type of question worth paying to read. Hi, Bill. I thought about what you said Thursday's TSL about drop the mocking and start locking up or prosecuting. You're right, and I never thought about the switch. I do now. Marking or snark seems to be what we do when we're in the minority, the Obama-Biden years. Now that we're in power, it's more like what I grew up learning in school. Follow the laws, don't like the laws. Run for someone in office to change the law. Until then, follow the law. Break the law, you'll suffer consequences. You'll learn that the consequences are not worth breaking the laws. So the question, unlike the net effect of broken windows policing, which worked way back when, we can never expect Antifa, Trantifa, and the bat guano crazy anarchists to ever learn from the consequences which will ultimately come for them in the next 3 years. Or are we doomed to battle these groups as soon as they're released from their consequences? Rust never sleeps. I'll give you my first take on this. Yeah, that's another interesting thing that very few people know. Exxon Petrola says electricity is not in the wire, it's around it. That's right. We've been taught that electrons travel down that copper wire. Not true. It's a field that goes around the wire. That was interesting to learn. So let me tell you what I think about this, Road Rider. I think the reason I've been thinking a lot about this for this firewall, which is coming. I've still got to get the bloody website locked up, but I'm not going to go down that road again. In any event, I'll tell you what I think about this. I think the reason that everybody realizes that the world is a different place after the Charlie Kirk assassination is twofold. Number one, I think and people feel a sense of loss, and that the world has changed and that it's changed for the worse. And I certainly feel that after Charlie's assassination. I think there's lots of elements to it, and the visceral shock of it and so on. But I think the two things that are happening here, number one is that it has shocked and saddened us to realize how demented and dangerous the people that we thought were our political opponents are, how different they are, how fundamentally different they are. It's not a question of like they have different politics or different policies. They are built differently than we are, and I'm going to get into that in a lot of detail. I'm going to get into this type B personalities clusters and things like that. And if you haven't heard of that before, there's a lot of gold to be mined there. So I think part of the change is that the sadness is this realization that no, this isn't a political disagreement. This isn't our neighbors. I'm talking about the woke left. This is not our neighbors who we agree to disagree with. These people genuinely do want us dead, and they're not kidding about it. And their inhumanity, which was on display after the assassination, their inhumanity really shocked us, angered us, but shocked us. And I think the other thing that's different is there's all, with the Jimmy Kimmel thing and all the rest of it. And you're a hypocrite. Well, you're a hypocrite. Well, you didn't say anything when this Democratic person was killed. Well, they weren't killed for their politics, blah, blah, blah. Well, you didn't complain when Tucker Carlson was canceled and all of this stuff. And you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I don't care about this anymore. I've figured it out. What is different now, and I'm just going to come out and say this on this firewall. I'm just going to say, hey, listen, this is to the left, to the woke left. I'm not interested anymore in hypocrisy or who did what or anything. I'm giving you fair warning, not that you deserve it, but I'm telling you, we're playing by your rules now. Okay, we are playing by your rules now, not ours. So if you want to know why the cancel thing happened, and if you want to know why everybody's talking about ammoing up and why you've been declared a terrorist organization, all the rest of it, the Charlie Kirk assassination showed us who you are at the core. And now we're not playing by our rules. We're not playing by the good guy rules. We're not playing by the Marquis de Queensberry fair rules that we grew up with and that we were told to admire and to obey. It's very difficult to shake law-abiding people out of their law-abiding ways. And I'm not saying we're going extra legal on this. I'm just telling you, we're playing by your rules now. We're going to try and cancel every single one of you. We want to get every single one of you fired that was dancing on the grave. We are not in politics anymore. I'm no longer going to give you guys the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to talk about bipartisanship anymore. I'm not going to talk about unity anymore. It's over. It's done. We have seen what you are. You've always known what we are, and you've played us because you know that we play by rules, so you don't have to play by. And that gives you lots of short-term advantages. But we are done playing now. Okay, politically, we are playing by your rules now, which is sheer power for power's sake. That's what we're interested in now. We are going to amass as much sheer power as we can, and we are going to deconstruct every single catastrophe that you've constructed for this country. We're not just gonna stop you. We're going to stop you, and then we're going to unbuild everything that you put into place. We're gonna tear it all down. We're going to tear it down. We're going to tear down Black Lives Matter. We're going to tear down the whole racism thing. That's not flying anymore. You know, we call us whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It's not the same game. It's going to take you a while to realize this, I understand. But we are not playing by our rules anymore. Now we're playing by your rules. So, buckle up. And you're going to find out what happens when the people who just want to be left alone can't be left alone anymore. You're going to find out what happens when the people who are paying the bills decide they're not going to pay the bills anymore. You're going to see. So that's what I feel. And I don't think there's any way the Democrats have a chance in these midterms. I really think it's just going to get worse and worse and worse for them. And as it does, as they get the sense more and more powerless, and as they get more and more aware of the fact that they are on the wrong side of history, which is an absurd thing to say. My friend Mike, not Matt Walsh, Mike Walsh said that history doesn't have a predetermined path. It's not like a channel that you can look at. You're on the wrong side of it. History goes the way that people will it to go. So you've shown us what you are. Not by the assassination, by the reaction, right? The assassination is always one person that's out on the fringe, but the reaction. And we'd been seeing this when we saw this when Trump was shot at and missed. And we see it when guys like Tim Walz say, "Oh, I was hoping for good news today and we didn't get it today." Okay, all right, got it. I'm not interested in arguing who started it. I'm not interested in talking about any of this stuff. Done. We're playing by your rules now. Sheer power for political might, and we are going to wield the flaming sword, and we are going to cut this edifice that you built down to pieces and cast it back into the pit where it came from. And if you don't like it, you can go pound sand. You never played fair. You never cared about anything other than your own political power, and now we're playing that game too, and you're not going to like us when we're angry. So there you go. Where did my Twitch? Yeah, you're not going to like us when we're angry. And we're angry. Just don't go back to the satanic panic day. I'm looking at all these. What are these? Oh, these are football scores. Sinclair and Nexstar are flexing some power tomorrow. So is that what's going to happen? Is Disney reinstating? I just was on a rant there. Is Disney reinstating Kimmel, but a lot of the affiliates not going to run him? Is that the latest? Just trying to catch up here. Okay. Let's see. Broke college student. Hello, Bill. I'd like to see your attempts to reach young men succeed, but here is some well-meaning tough love posted as a question instead of an email to see others' responses. Have you gotten any feedback on why people stop being members when they cancel? Yeah, there's ongoing toothache in the size of the website and a lack of written content for me and stuff like that. If you had $1 million to advertise, you wouldn't get many viewers. YouTube has recently changed its algorithm, and many different niche topic channels with 6-digit viewership counts have seen plummeting in views, ranging from sword to tech channels. The people who are big today cannot make it big if they started over. Interesting. Everyone on the online right, from Tim Pool to Sargon of Akkad to Elon Musk, knows and interacts with each other. X helps us a lot. And they've been around a long time. I don't think you have the size or audience or niche knowledge that would sell enough to warrant you going onto larger platforms from their perspective. I think you're valuable in helping the generations on the right to understand each other. I'm biased from here, but from here it looks like the old not wanting to listen to the young. The base is much more to the right than the leadership. You got that right. You've been around long enough from both sides to talk about things like what donors want, for example. The ones I would have in mind would all be respectful. Clavin did an episode with a personality called Jay Burden for an example of what they may look like. A lot of people want no enemies on the right after Kirk's death and might be willing to talk to pretty much anyone, members and donors. Your membership base is not young, and what they find appealing is probably not what young men find appealing. Considering the business almost went under a couple of weeks ago per your streams, who are you aiming to be your members? Best of luck, and then a link to the Clavin interview. So the strategy is twofold. Number one, to go reclaim as many of the lost members that we as we can. That's a tough thing to do. It's going after somebody who's been on board and then kind of thrown up their hands and left. Many times when we get a cancellation, most of the times when we get a cancellation, we get a very nice letter saying it's nothing personal, it's just finances and stuff like that, which is nice. But clearly, got to go back to the things that worked to keep the people in the demographic that I had happy enough to either stay or even come back. So that means written stuff like firewalls and so on. I have been through the devil's own nightmare with these developers trying to do this simple thing and this constant, well, I just need this much more money or this much more time. It's just horrific. So there's that. And then the second thing is going aggressively after a new younger audience, which I frankly don't think I could do without AI video. I just don't see it happening. I don't think I'd have anything like the ability to flex a sense of humor or have the eye candy or because that is there. Visual interest is there, and the format has to be much shorter, and lots of things that I'm still learning about. I think in terms of a person's efforts, there's nothing more important you can do, and I owe Charlie Kirk a fair amount of this, than to influence the future, right? I mean, essentially, conservatives already have the message, and a lot of what I've done has been, preaching to the choir is derided, and rightfully so for in a lot of ways. I like to think just going up and down the line, passing out ammunition and tell people to, be steady and trust the people on your left and right and aim low and don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes kind of thing. But I think, and I'm guilty of this certainly, I think that the 2024 election not only the 2024 election not only changed my mind about things, it reversed my opinion about things. I remember when I was talking about things to come in that 80-year cycle, that theory predicts that Gen Z will be the next greatest generation. They'll be the next heroic generation. I thought, well, I'll see Gen Z going ashore on Iwo Jima. Then I realized that's not where the fight's going to be next time. The fight's going to be for hearts and minds, and it's going to be for the ability to heal a lot of people who are mentally ill, and the great crime that's been committed against Gen Z, especially. I'm the tail end of the baby boom. Gen X got a worse education than I got. Gen Y got a worse education than they did. Millennials got a worse education than Gen Y, and Gen Z's gotten just table scraps. And there's an enormous deficit of knowledge, enormous deficit of wisdom and guidance, I think is probably a good word. I don't have any kids, obviously, and I think I would have been a good dad, and I'm not trying to be their dad so much as just be somebody who's morally consistent. I think that's probably it. Make the case for moral behavior, back it up with evidence. Argue fairly, and teach people how to think. That's really my goal now, is just teaching people how to think. I looked at, did a lot of thinking about these firewalls and afterburners. I was talking with Shelley about this earlier today. I said, I've been describing myself as a political pundit for a long time, because that's what I pretty much considered my job to be. But the fact of the matter is, what I really am is an educator. I'm a teacher. The best firewalls and afterburners were good because they taught you something. You learn something about it. Eat the Rich showed how much wealth you could take from everybody and realize you'd have nothing left after that. And Number One with the Bullet showed that the U.S. has actually the lowest murder rate in the world if you take away the cities and you go to places that are packed with guns, like Plano, Texas, and things like that. So that educational aspect of it is kind of where I'm concentrating. I still, more than anything, want to do things like the colonies, but it's become clear to me that I can't do that unless the business is on a for-profit path. And having watched Jeremy with Daily Wire, I don't need to get anything like that big, but Jeremy built Daily Wire up out of politics so that he could direct movies, and that was what we were doing with Declaration Entertainment back in 2010. So the technologies that are available now really excite me, and I know from long experience, having lived on bill time, that things generally don't get done unless they're fun to do, and the AI stuff to me is really fun. So that's basically the plan, is to do no less than a firewall a month, and hopefully somewhat more than that, but commit to at least one a month. Something written, because that's really where my main skill is, in writing. And then have fun with the Gen Z stuff. And if I could put two of those things together and get enough members up to get this thing profitable, then I can start hiring people to do the editing, which takes an awful lot of my time, and then you get on the growth cycle rather than the downward spiral. So that's kind of the plan as far as that goes. Broke college student, and we'll see. And I'm real happy to have this Gen Z mailing list, which I guess I'll get to tomorrow. They seem really fired up, and we'll give it a shot. We'll give it a try. Mainly, I have to go to donors. I have to go to big donors. This was a big realization of mine. To convince somebody to give you 100, if you can convince one person to put in 100 grand, that's the same as convincing 860 people to put in 10 grand. I know the numbers don't sound like quite the same, but it's $120 a year for the membership and stuff. Marisha Dark said Daily Wire had 2 leaders, visionary and an executor. Having to do both at once is harder. Yes, it's much harder. And Marisha Dark in both places. Bill, I think the problem is simpler than that. You have too many plates spinning at once. Focus on doing one thing and do it well until it's finished, exhausted, or self-sustaining. Well, yeah. But even that is, I mean, I've got so much stuff that just has to get done just to keep, I know you would, Gummins. Thank you very much. But there's just so much work that has to be done just to keep the plate spinning. I mean, obviously, we able to hire an editor back. I could be done with the right angles in a day, and that would be half a day probably, and then I wouldn't have to work on it like I will tonight. Like when the show is over, it's 8:30 now. When it's over, I've got to do another right angle, which is going to take me in terms of editing it, uploading it to the number of places I need to upload it, all the mouse clicks necessary. It's going to be another 90 minutes. So that means I'm not going to get home till 11 at the earliest. And, there you go. So, Marisha said Charlie's attitude was, I will outwork the left until we win. I don't want to say this because I don't like what it says, really, but it's easier to do that when you're 31 than it is to do when you're 66. That's just a fact. Yeah, and walking with me this whole time, like death at my shoulder, is this bloody website thing, which I've been looking at this new membership thing, Member Press, which has got all these benefits, and I wanted to introduce it, but we're already using Ultimate Member, which is old and busted, and I wanted the new hotness. But then it's like, okay, how do we integrate this? Yeah, I see the merchandise, and it's like, it's just more time, and it's I want to grow the membership, and I don't want to keep using Ultimate Member because it's free and it's kludgy, but I can't unbuild it. I had a conference call scheduled for this morning at 10. I took it, and my email was, I've got 1,600 members on Ultimate Member, and if I switch to Member Plus, which does all kinds of cool things, then what happens to those 1,600 members? And all she did was point me to the website and talk about the different plans they have, and it's like, so. I'll tell you one thing. I'm not hiring anybody else from overseas. I'm just gonna hire an American who's on Eastern time at the most extreme. Half of the reasons this took as long as it did was the other person's on the other side of the world, and I've just got to get this thing going. So it's just been oral surgery without anesthesia for forever now, since April, and it's holding me back on everything. It's like I can't release story mechanics. I can't do any of these things to get this thing going, because once you get it going, people are presumably going to come to your website, and you better be able to take their money, or else you're done. So that's the latest on that. Curtin says got compliments on your "This Is My Safe Space" T-shirt today. It's excellent. Yeah, that was done by Sabo. I think I've got one back. I'll show it to you. Now this design I own, I paid for, so I can merge this. There you go. So, Yeah, this weekend might actually work, Marisha. I'm going to. I'm going. Yeah, I might take you up on that. I'm going to Washington. I'll be gone on. I won't be here next Monday. I'll be gone Monday night, Tuesday night, back Wednesday night, I think. Dick Rattan is being interred at Arlington. So, there's that. So let me see how much I have done, but I'll take you up on it either then or when I come back. So anyway, that's that. So let's just move on here as I can get out of here. Want one like that says free speech zone. Well, I can do that too. Yeah, but the merch thing is, you're right. It's easy. It's easy to set up, and then it's just essentially free money. I had some ideas for some good merch too. I really wanted to have the neutral expression emoji. I just wanted one that said have a nominal day. Just stuff that was, kind of my alley, and a couple things like that that are clever. But we'll see. Roger Amjad says, I follow a guy with less than 1,000 subs and under 200 videos, and he's contracted with a merch vendor. Yes. Yes. I've often wished I had the ability to just basically stop time so that I could work 10 days and catch up without having to deliver anything. You know what I mean? Just 10 days to catch up. I got 10 days behind back in 2009, and still trying to catch up. Okay. Capital G Geek, greetings from the swamps of Northern Virginia. Regarding your foray into AI video, I'm reminded of my own attempt to have it assist with scripting. I spent 6 hours tweaking and trying to get it to write something, and then I found that it was mixing two different versions. It took me less than 2 hours to do manually what I was trying to automate. You said that AI can get 80% of the way there with a single prompt. Is it even capable of going the rest of the way, or would it be faster to adjust things in another application like the lizard eyes in After Effects? I tried the lizard eyes in Premiere, and I never figured out how to do the motion tracking in After Effects, but they were just floating around all over the place, and it just didn't look real. Also, we have good. As far as AI writing stuff goes, a lot of people are discovering just that AI is not as smart as we have been led to believe it is, and I've certainly had that experience. I think from like a the geostationary orbit view, looking down on it, I think the problem seems to be is that the existing AIs are written to be too flattering and too unassertive. They're, every single time you finish with them, they end with another question. Would you like to dig deeper in this, or is there something else I can help you with? Which is fine, but one of the things I've never seen, and I've heard a lot of people dealing with this issue, is, can you help me do this? And the AI says, absolutely, I'll give you a series of step-by-step things. You follow the step-by-step things, and step 6 just doesn't work. And you go back to this, and it turns, I was wrong about this. And then when it comes down to it, Scott Ott was talking about this. He was having AI try to write an app for him, and he worked with this thing for hours. And finally, it failed so many times. He just said to the AI, "It seems to me like when you said this would not be a problem, that you were mistaken." And the AI said, "Yes, I was mistaken. This is much harder than I thought it would be." That's a problem. That's really a problem. So yeah, Anyway, back here. Also, we have Good Samaritan laws for people helping someone who is injured. Should we have the same thing for people intervening where a crime is being committed? They should be given the same level of qualified immunity that cops get. That might reverse the spectator trend. That's an interesting idea. That's a really good idea. Kind of like a Good Samaritan law, yeah. Because there was a guy in aviation who was widely hated throughout the aviation community. His name escapes me now. This would be in the 90s, I want to say. Everybody hated this guy. And then he got into a plane crash and bellied it in, and the plane caught fire. And a guy went forward and saved his life and pulled him out of the burning airplane, and the guy sued him. That's that's loathsome beyond my ability to you know, even express. What kind of person does that? So yeah, I think that's actually a really great idea. Uh, a really great idea. You said you were reluctant to do a series on China as it would be another downer. I disagree since Daily Wire has buried the other series. That would be the first one available to the world. Now that H-1Bs cost 100 grand with a salary floor of 150K, I'm hoping that fixes the tech job market. Yeah, me too. Um, me too. Um, I don't really want to do China, you know. I was, what's the name of this guy? It's, he's fairly recent. He does these kind of, they look exactly like the St. Louis Gateway Arch. You know, these are the trends, and the U.S. is on its way down, and China's on its way up. I saw one of his things about, you know, declining empires, and, you know, look back at the British and the Dutch and the Chinese and all the rest of this stuff. And I said, look, there's no question the pattern is real. And I think his biggest point is one of the key indicators is education, and education in this country is just appalling, appalling. But I don't see China. I just don't see China doing it. I don't. They've got a population collapse that's monumental. Their economic system is, their banking system is makes ours look like, you know, like you know, the Bailey Savings and Loan, and on and on and on. I just don't see them doing it. I don't. It's very hard to argue with the number of those arches and the number of those patterns and that cycle, an 80-year cycle. All of that is true. But the one thing that is different is that we have entered an entirely new age. We've entered the information age. And the information age is not the Industrial Revolution. And they're talking about, he was talking about military power. Well, military power used to be, could you put 8 million men under arms? Now it's got nothing to do with that. The information age is not about muscles, it's about creativity. And China has enormously better educated population than we do. But their culture is a culture of submission and aversion to risk taking. And they don't have the fusion of all these different ideas that we have in the United States because they are so culturally monolithic. This guy said at the very end, maybe he was just throwing a bone. I forget the guy's name. I just saw him before, but I'm sure most of you have seen it. And he said, look, you know, this downward trend, you got to understand what it is. And then, you know, he's got a guy underneath this thing, and he's kind of cranking it around and bringing it back up again. I think the 2024 election was absolutely the well, let's put it this way: if that election had gone the other way, it would have been very difficult to do that. Marisha says new updates on China's military and technological capabilities might change your mind on them being a paper tiger. I'm not much impressed by their technology. I'm much more concerned with how they get their technology. I'm concerned about well, when I say concerned, I'm relieved that that they don't have the cultural foundational bedrock to let lower level people make decisions. Everything they do is brute force, and most of it is stealing. And if you're stealing, you're always a generation behind. I don't see them as a when I said they're a paper tiger, I'm not trying to say that they have a very impressive military on paper, and they're doing things like micro drones and all kinds of other things. Their cyber stuff, all that stuff is great, but they don't innovate. And it's not like they're catching up on innovation. They don't innovate because they don't have an innovation culture. They don't have a startup culture, don't have an entrepreneurial culture. Nobody does. Nobody does. Yes, they can build hypersonic missiles. That's just grand, but that's not what it's about. Their Navy is called the People's Liberation Army Navy. Now that may not sound like much to you, but that Orwell understood the power of words. That alone, the People's Liberation Army Navy plan, they do not coordinate. They hate each other as much as the Imperial Japanese Navy hated the Imperial Army. And when you're talking about 21st century warfare, it's all about joint operations, it's all about multi-domain warfare. And they just don't seem to me to have that in their culture. You know, their flat deck carrier, their Type 3, they trotted that thing out, and took all these pictures, and they got guys exactly like our guys, wearing the exact same vests as our guys, using the exact same marshalling gestures and the exact same shooter things as our guys. Looks exactly like an American aircraft carrier, except everything is spotless and new, and all the uniforms are creased, and all the jets are spotless because they're not flying them. The fact that our fleet looks dirty is an indication that the fleet is actually active. We actually fly our airplanes. That's why they have oil stains on them, and then this Type 3 just goes back to port, and then what happens? Nothing. That one China policy has doomed them to a demographic collapse. Yeah, and Lindy, and this is a really important point too. Lindy says, not to mention the one-child policy's effect. A hot war means that your only child has died and your family line is gone. That is important to everybody on the planet, but to the Chinese especially. Their cultural foundation is their line of ancestors and continuance of the family. They are facing huge problems. We're facing huge problems too, but we seem to be solving them. And if this Charlie Kirk assassination means we're taking the gloves off of ourselves and unstaking us to the beach, then watch out. Watch out. I'd like to see money mean money again, and the giant, enormous liability and weakness of the debt is enormous. But there you go. Capuchino says BRICS a factor. Is that? Is that Brazil, Russia, India, China, and I don't know who the S is. We know our stuff works because we use it, and we learned it, and we learned it the hard way, and we keep practicing it. I don't know. South Africa, okay. Well, none of those countries what is it? Who's the R again? Russia, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Okay, so Association of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and the United Emirates. What do they have in common other than the fact that they'd like to form a union apart from the United States? What is their common interest? I am a student of history. I am not aware that China has ever fought a war with an ally. I don't believe they have ever fought a war with an ally, ever. Brazil, Argentina is going to pass Brazil very quickly because Argentina figured it out. Brazil has been the world power waiting in the wings for 100 years now. Well, not 100, but 80. South Africa is finished. There is no more South Africa. South Africa, you just might as well just take the S out of BRICS because there is no South Africa anymore. Egypt, Ethiopia is a joke. Egypt is not known for a great deal of innovation. I would take the United States and Israel over BRICS in a heartbeat, and we'd walk all over If you throw Argentina into the mix, that'd be great. Um, I think there's still hope for the United Kingdom, but Europe, as we understand Europe, is in deep, deep trouble. And I think the example of America and the MAGA movement is giving them real hope. Real hope. 3 million people in the streets. Was it 2 days after Charlie Kirk's assassination? That's a real deal. So, I don't know. Deep, don't get to see too often. Deep says, speaking of aircraft carriers, I have to say that the Italian light carrier Cavour is a beautiful looking ship. Let me have a look. I've not heard of it. I'll tell you one thing, the Queen Elizabeth class is the ugliest vessels that have ever put to sea. Those things are freaking hideous. It's a jump jet carrier. Do they have a catapult on that? No. Helicopters and Harriers, it looks like. Yeah, it's a good looking ship, absolutely. I like the bridge arrangement. I like that kind of aftermast there. It's flatten out that jump ramp and put an angled deck on that thing. You'd have a real yeah, the two island ones. Queen Elizabeth class, QE2 class is horrific. It's scary ugly. You put the F-35s on that Italian aircraft carrier, and you got a real issue. But it's not just a question of like, okay, you got a carrier. It's like, how do you use it? I mean, the operations on a carrier are so unbelievably. Thank you, Roger. I'll be looking for that. Thank you very much. Intricate. When they're moving jets around in World War II, they used to have a big table with little wooden tokens that they would move around. But now that we're in the computer age, with the USS Ford, now we've advanced to a big table with little wooden tokens that we move around because that's the best way to do it. Obviously, you could have put that on a computer and you could have done AI and all kinds of things, but no, you got 4 or 5 guys who have a lot of experience doing this. They got their fingers on this thing, they can touch it, and they can feel it, and they're moving these things around. It's not information you get for free, So that would be my take on that for what it's worth. Gosh, let's see. Okay. Cavour does carry F-35s now. They're not nuclear powered. Yeah. Canada scares me. Canada is really, really shockingly totalitarian. Fiery Waco says best looking carrier was Enterprise CVN 65. I agree. If you're talking about the original island on that, the kind of round island with the little radar antennas or whatever they were, must have been radar antennas. I actually think the Ford is really beautiful. That little island way in the back like that's like, yeah, man. We don't mess around. We don't carry a pound above the waterline that we don't need. Okay, moving on. We got a Jacob Belchek, and we got a Eric Blake and a Marisha Dark. I think we did one Marisha Dark. I think we're not going to do 2 tonight. Marisha, carry it over. And sorry about that. Capital G Geek. Greetings from the swamps of. I'm sorry, just read that. Jacob Belchek. Hail Bill. Thoughts on the memorial yesterday? My church did a live stream, and I spent 2.5 hours with tears in my eyes. I've seen many, many people feeling the call toward God from the last 2 weeks. Are you among them? Lastly, you said last week that you're still agnostic on the idea of an ultimate supernatural evil. Can you elaborate more on why that is, and are you still similarly agnostic about ultimate supernatural good? Gen Z lad here. Sent you an email last week. Gotcha. Can't wait to talk with you guys, but I'll catch the stream tomorrow. Going to my college's TPUSA meeting tonight. So I did not watch any of the memorial. I heard that there were 300,000 people, 100,000 in the main auditorium, another 100,000 in another stadium, and then 100,000 or something turned away. There's no question that this is not a political movement; it's a spiritual movement, and I'm 100% in favor of it, and I think it's great. Um, I think the reason I'm agnostic on the idea when it look, I believe in supernatural good and I believe in supernatural evil, and on some level, I'm a guy who's playing chess and I'm keeping my finger on the piece. Um, uh, I think I think I think I have to understand the reductionist materialist argument and be prepared to deal with it. It's a question of it's not a question of hedging my bets or anything. It's a question of you know having two cartridges in case I have to fight two different ways. Um, I mean, I clearly believe that there's an ultimate good and an ultimate evil, and yet I can't operate in that domain. I have to operate in the material plane, um, and so while I can say things like and not only say them but believe them that these people on the left are supernaturally evil. It's my job, and this is we were talking earlier about the whole religious thing and what's my niche and what I'm good at. It's my job to understand what supernatural evil looks like and how it expresses itself in the material world. And this is the things that I was mentioning with the B-type personality cluster. Um, my entire premise on that firewall, which will be coming late to the party, um, is like I said, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, and it's not just here's my opinion on Charlie Kirk. It's like, do I believe in a soul? Yes, I do. I absolutely do. What I'm trying to say, though, is my take on this is going to be we need to understand what's going on with the left, not to excuse them or mitigate them, but we need to understand them the same way we need to understand the composition of the Japanese Imperial Navy fleet. We need to understand them. Um, uh, yeah, I think that's probably fair, Marcia. Um, uh, so, so my take on this is that this business of left-wing ideology corrupting people, I think we've got that backwards. I think we're looking at that backwards. All of us have been exposed to left-wing ideology. We've all been exposed to it. We know what it is. We know what the narrative is. We get the narrative pounded into our heads every time we try to go look at a new Iron Man movie or a new Captain America. We get the narrative. We get the free Palestine. We get their message. It's not like we don't know what it is. We're not just exposed to it. We're saturated with it. So why is it that conservatives are absolutely immune to this, and then there's a spectrum of people who are sympathetic to it, who are fanatically believe in it, and who insanely believe in it? I think we're looking at it backwards. I don't think we should be looking at the left-wing philosophy as contaminating normal people. I think we need to look at what kind of people are drawn to left-wing philosophy rather than what left-wing philosophy does to your average Joe. What kind of people are attracted to it? I'll give you just a little preview of this because I'm relatively new into this research myself. Hang on a second. Um, so psychologists no longer use terms of psychology change all the time, and some of that is we don't want to harsh language, but part of it is psychology is an actual science, and it's developed over time. I could say that the left are psychopaths, but that term has absolutely no meaning whatsoever. It's a pointless term to use, and since it's pointless, it's actually destructive and hurts the case. Psychopathy has a very distinct clinical definition, and I'm not going to use it because the general cultural definition of saying somebody's a psychopath has been so misused that it's just useless. It's a useless term. Um, psychology has escalating levels of illness. There's a character disorder, and then there's you get the idea. Um, but kind of a bottom of the pyramid is personality disorder, uh, and each personality disorder is distinct, but it's possible to have more than one. So here are four personality disorders: antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder. Those are four separate and distinct psychological afflictions. However, what psychologists have found is that those four particularly cluster together, and that's the type B cluster. There's a cluster of personality disorders that make you kind of timid and afraid and paranoid. I think that's the type C personality cluster. But the type B personality disorder cluster is interesting. So listen to these symptoms and tell me if this sounds like your typical screaming woke maniac. Antisocial personality disorder. Individuals with this disorder exhibit a disregard for social norms and laws, lack empathy, and show a pattern of manipulative and exploitative behaviors. Borderline personality disorder. Characterized by intense mood swings, unstable relationships, self-harm, and a fear of abandonment. If you've ever seen these people with these piercings and the self-harm thing, that's pretty clear. Histrionic personality disorder. Individuals with this disorder crave attention and display excessive emotionality, often exaggerating their symptoms to gain sympathy or validation. And finally, narcissistic personality disorder. People with this disorder have an inflated sense of self-importance, lack empathy, and believe they're entitled to special treatment. Somebody with narcissistic personality disorder might name themselves Destiny, for example. Histrionic personality disorder might be somebody like, I don't know, Hassan Piker, talking about how you have to get out there and gut people and put their entrails on the thing, and these people at these rallies who just get in your face and start screaming. Antisocial personality disorder, disregard for social norms and laws, lack empathy, and show a pattern of manipulative and exploitative behavior. Roadrunner says they all sound like Democratic politicians. They do. But this cluster B personality disorders describes the woke left. And just reading down, so common symptoms of cluster B, this is the whole cluster now, this is not individually. Common symptoms of cluster B personality disorders include intense emotions, impulsivity, unstable relationships, difficulty regulating emotions, self-harm, manipulative behaviors, lack of empathy, grandiosity, and attention seeking. So my entire thesis is that when somebody like a trans person says that Charlie was killing trans people and that there's a trans genocide, they're not exaggerating. That's what they feel. Their entire personality is based upon their identity. And when their identity is challenged intellectually, they experience something like an attack. Because if Charlie Kirk, for example, or anybody else, is making an argument that they cannot refute, then that means that their personality, their ego construction, is under attack, and if it falls apart, then on some level they die. In the same way that the Men Who Wanted to Be Left Alone poem says, men who want to be left alone will fight with unbridled violence and prejudice, because if they have to fight, that means they no longer are the person who wanted to be left alone. They have killed the person who wanted to be left alone. Now you have to go out there and deal with these things, and so you have killed the person they used to be. It's not just their sexual identity, Lisa, it's their entire identity. For example, narcissistic personality disorder, and just think about this, right? We've got to we're out there protesting, and we're going to glue our hands to the sidewalk in order to save the planet, right? They're not going to mitigate climate change. They're not going to they're going to save the planet. Every single living thing on the planet is predicated on them, and this is why I'm going to start off with Tim Treadwell and his bears, because it's nice and neutral, gets us away from the politics, and you can start focusing on the kind of personality. He thought over time that if he wasn't there, people would come and exterminate all the grizzly bears on the planet, and only he was there to defend them. And that is narcissistic, and it's antisocial, and it's borderline, and it's histrionic. These are the kinds of people whose politics is not part of their life. Politics is their identity. This is why they never laugh. This is why you never see them having fun. How can you have fun and relax and enjoy yourself when there's a genocide going on in Palestine, when the earth is on its last few hours, when black people are being assassinated by policemen? How can you possibly relax and have fun for a half an hour when there's so much injustice that is dependent on me to stop it? I can never go off duty because I am so important that if I stop fighting the social justice fight for even 10 minutes, then it's all over. The fascists will take over. As I said before, they call us fascists and Nazis not to put us down, but to put them up. Because if they're fighting Nazis and fascists, then they're heroes, and they're very brave, and they're risking their lives by going to a protest. Risking their lives. Not risking their lives. If this were really a fascist dictatorship, there would be no protests. You wouldn't hear about people saying Trump is a dictator because he'd be taken out and shot. But if they're not heroes fighting against Nazism, then they're faced with no other conclusion than the fact that they're just miserable, unhappy people who have an opinion, and that opinion is rather easy to dismantle using fundamental common sense and basic logic, which is why they can't hear it. If it gets inside their head, it starts them unraveling. So they got to shut up. They got to shut it up. And that's why we don't talk to fascists. You don't talk to fascists because if you did talk to somebody who you're calling a fascist, you'd find out pretty quickly they're not fascists. And if they're not fascists, then you're not a freedom fighter. And if you're not a freedom fighter, then what are you? You're just a loser with a big hole where their self-worth should be. And that is a form of death for them. The people who have been inculcated with leftist philosophy and have enough character, enough personality to listen to the other side, more often than not will convert to the other side. I've seen lots and lots of liberals saying, man, I just, I don't know, I was curious or whatever, and I went to a Trump rally and I was expecting to be called, an N-word or this or a faggot or whatever. And I got there and I found out that everybody was nice. They're just absolutely as nice as could be, welcomed me with open arms. And when I told everybody I went to a Trump rally and the people were really nice, then the left started calling me all the names that the right feared. That person has been inculcated with the philosophy, but they're not so broken that the politics becomes their identity. They have an identity independent of the politics, so they can switch their politics without committing suicide, without committing ego suicide. So, there you go. Marisha Dark says, I saw a tweet of some black man who said, I watched 50 hours of Charlie Kirk videos to see if he was racist. He's not. Yeah, he probably could have watched just 20 minutes, would have done it. But in any event, they get there. So, Roger Ramjet said Treadwell's greatest mistake was going back in the fall when the bears had gone into hyperphagia because they have to eat, to gorge themselves in preparation for hibernation. Always before he'd gone in the spring when the salmon were running and food was plentiful. Hubris, yes. Well, as this guy pointed out, as I mean to indicate in this, what Treadwell needed was he needed an extra like any other addict who was getting a dopamine hit on his interaction with the bears, he had to keep upping the dose. So he went from a guy who was able to live with bears to a guy who was alpha bear to a guy who was the savior of the bears. And that meant he had to get closer and closer and closer to them and get into more and more dangerous situations because he had to constantly convince himself that he was special, right? The bears won't attack me because the bears think of me as their god. That's basically what Treadwell thought, you know? He had to keep upping the dose because any idiot can be safe with bears in the springtime, but only Lord God King of the Bears can rule the bears when the bears are hungry. That was basically it. He just kept upping the dose. And when you hear him talking about the state and the Park Service, he foams at the mouth. He gets so deranged. It's these people are dangerous, man. They're dangerous, and we gotta start accepting the fact that they are. You can either say they have cases of cluster B personality disorders, or they're batshit crazy. In the end, it's the same thing, and that's what we're up against. And finally, Eric Blake. I guess I'm going to just call the show right now. Probably just call it a night. No, I'm just waiting for the explosion. I'll be able to hear it from here. Yeah, I think we'll probably just wrap it up now and get to that some other time. Waiting for the caps and the line of bayonets of exclamation points. All right, tonight the case for the Long March, the case of the Long March. Let's call him my bluff. I'm doomed. So, Bill, we all know about the suspension of Kimmel from his late-night comedy show over this, let's say, misinformation regarding Charlie Kirk's killer, etc. And now there's one element to the story that, while it hasn't been ignored, I'd argue has been downplayed a bit in its importance, and that's the role of Sinclair Media Group. I remember when the news broke that this reportedly conservative company had bought up a major chunk of TV stations across America. I was very happy about it, of course, but it was clear that owning a TV station doesn't mean owning a network. So for a while, it seemed like all the Sinclair Group could bring about was a cleaning out of lefty bias in local news, not bad, but not particularly sexy either. And then this past week, Sinclair and a counterpart company declared they were not going to broadcast Kimmel on their ABC stations any longer. And last, we see the full power of their presence in the culture. Yes, Mr. Iger, his show is part of your ABC network, but that doesn't mean that our ABC stations have to show it. Thus, I'd say my vision of the right winning ground in the culture via our own long march to the institutions has indeed begun to happen even before Elon's Twitter X victory. Sinclair Media Group are the quiet heroes, silently gaining ground, waiting to strike until the perfect moment. The Kimmel incident, tactics that would please Sun Tzu. So how inspired do you feel from that? Very inspired. And what's most inspirational about this is not just the Charlie Kirk example, but what it represents on a much larger scale, even though terrestrial television is rapidly on its way out. Networks fear their affiliates abandoning ship the same way that plantation owners feared a slave rebellion. That was where they were most tender. That was the thing that they stayed up at night looking at the ceiling about. Is the idea that these companies, that the network consists of independent molecules that joined up voluntarily but could leave at any time. Yes, by Rueco says broadcast still makes money. Absolutely yes, but it's definitely trending down. So it's not just the Charlie Kirk thing that scares the networks. What scares the networks is that other affiliate groups could do it. Now, back in the olden days, I'm sure there were some companies that owned more than one station. But generally speaking, when CBS started and ABC and NBC started in radio, except for ABC, these were independent stations. So you might have a network of, let's say, 200 of them. And if one of them decides not to air your show, or you lose one guy or two guys. During the Star Trek episode Plato's Stepchildren, the first interracial kiss on network TV happened between Uhura and Kirk. Now, they kind of backed into it because they were being psychically forced to do it, but nevertheless, it was a white man kissing a black woman. And a number of individual stations in the South took the show off the air in real time. When they saw it, they just went to the test pattern. And I don't know how many stations that was, but it was pretty much on a station by station basis. We live in an era, or coming out of an era anyway, of industrial era of accumulation and centralization. So now companies like Sinclair own, what do they own, 35, 40, 50, 60 stations, something like that. That's a pretty big bite. And when you put two of those things together, that's a real big bite. And this is why I think they reinstated Kimmel because Hollywood basically said, we're not going to, well, Hollywood threatened and said, we're not going to be in your movies anymore. 500 movie stars or whatever signed this thing saying we want Kimmel back. But what really happened was the network executives like Bob Iger realized he couldn't go to parties anymore, that no one would talk to him if he went to parties. That's basically what they do. So first he backed down from pressure from the right, then he backed down from pressure from the left. That's good to know. Fiery Waco says Sinclair and Nexstar own 22% of all ABC stations. That is a significant hit in any business. In any business, if you lose 22% of your customer base, that is catastrophic. I think that's probably more than Bud Light lost, although I'm not sure exactly what their total percentage share was when the dust settled. But that's enough to wreck your whole day. So the networks are terrified of this as a precedent, right? Because if these guys decided to pull the plug, then other affiliates and conglomerates might get uppity as well. Don't forget the violent threats as well. Yeah, I didn't hear about that, John, but I'm sure they're there. So the idea that that affiliates can just opt out is horrifying to networks, because if they opt out, I reckon they don't have to pay the advertising revenues. This transition into an information age economy is, well, this kind of transitions only happened twice before, once 7,000 BC and then 400 years ago. So these are monumental shifts that we're living through, and if 22% of your revenue base can just say, we're heading out, we're leaving, then that's a major threat to ABC. An ABC station was shot up in California. Well, imagine my surprise. Really? Well, isn't that a shock? Steve Young says, in my Chicago area, most every commercial feature interracial couples with black children, medicine, insurance, paint, toys, you name it. Absolutely, yes. And it's almost always, not exclusively, but almost always a black male and a white female. Almost every time. Yeah. So, he's, look, as far as I'm concerned, Kimmel and Colbert, and to some degree, that twerp, what's his name, Seth Meyers. But Kimmel and Colbert killed late night TV. He just took the Colbert Report and turned it into, what is he? Is he late night? Who's got the Tonight Show now? Kimmel? Late night TV was not just a program, it was a genre. And it's gone. And Gutfeld is cleaning their clock, but Gutfeld isn't late night TV either. He's just conservative version of what they've done, and it's a shame because I loved late night TV, and not just during the Carson era, because Carson was just, if you grew up at a certain age, you watched Johnny Carson pretty much every night, and that was it. Um, but Leno had his ups and downs, but Conan was great, and Letterman in his prime was great, and come on. I got his face. The Scotsman was great. Um, Fallon's got the Tonight Show. Yeah. So they politicized everything. And Craig Ferguson. There you go. Yeah, Ferguson. Ferguson was terrific. He was hilarious. And Maud North says my problems, my generation are too busy to watch late night. Well, it wasn't just that, obviously. Maud. I mean, it's hard for young people to realize this, but there was a time when you had to wait to watch something on TV, and you had to wait to listen to something on the radio. You just couldn't get to it 24/7. You just had to wait, and you couldn't binge watch it or anything. It's Thursday night, is whatever night it was. Friends is going to be on, and if you were half an hour late, or if you're half an hour late, you missed the whole show. You 5 minutes late, there's no recording it, no backing up. You just missed it, and I think I think there's I don't know. I don't know if the market is still there, but Carson was he was a gentleman. Battle Smurf says yes, and I couldn't tell you his politics. I honestly couldn't tell you. Kirk's Bamboo Bazooka says Arsenio was the first politically racially divisive late night host. Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah, Elisa says we grew up without late night TV, and I'm not saying that late night TV was like a paradise or anything, but the one thing about TV prior to I don't know, to turn of the century, or probably the '90s even, was that we all watched it together. So we had a common culture. Everybody who went to work, most of the people who went to work probably went to bed watching the same stuff as everybody else at the same time. So people had a common cultural language. You could talk about all kinds of things. And I saw a video yesterday of younger people, millennials and Gen Z, watching the opening scene from Saving Private Ryan, and they're just blown away by it. I would love to show people. We have a copyright strike against us from something we did 2 years ago or something. But I would, and I did this for a while. We had Foster Friday. I would just like to show every single one of Foster Brooks's roast videos to young people. I think he's my favorite. I just love him. I love him. Most people have never heard of him. I just think I just love him. Yeah, Adam Carolla would be an interesting replacement. Dave's Reels Area 51 says, easy to fix, don't binge, watch as a group and bring back water cooler talk, have some discipline, don't blame the new tech for how we use it. Well, nobody watches it at the same time, Dave. If you were not to binge, some people watch it on Wednesdays, some people watch it on Thursdays when they're free, Foster Brooks was, he was just really, really clever. And all of these guys, and you watch young people, if you watch young people watch like the Dean Martin roasts, they gasp because there's, white guys making fun of black guys, and black guys making fun of white guys, and Jews making fun of Gentiles, and Gentiles making fun of Jews, and they're openly doing it. And they're making fun of Dean Martin being Italian, and everybody's laughing, and they're gasping. I've seen it many, many times. What? Did he just say what I thought he said? Yes, he did. Yeah, he sure did. And they all loved each other. And it was a better time. Marisha says there's still things that people watch collectively, like K-pop Demon Hunters. Okay, that's fine. But K-pop Demon Hunters does not exactly reference the greater culture, and late night talk show TV did that, and it did it fairly. The Carson or any of them would come out prior to this batch, prior to Kimmel and Colbert and that crowd, um, would come out and they would make jokes about the president. And they would make jokes about the president if he was a Republican or if he was a Democrat. They made nonpartisan jokes about the president. They didn't go out there to score political points. So, Mod North says, I'm 30 and I'm slowly starting to appreciate this pace. Even I'm starting to lose touch with the more younger generation. Being in the middle, I have no grasp of what people think. Well, there's a lot of that going around, Mod, and it's a problem. I really think Gen Z. I love Foster Brooks, but the thing they really need to be exposed to is Rickles. Um, I was not a huge Rickles fan. I mean, I much preferred Foster Brooks to Rickles, but I think if Gen Z could watch Rickles work, they'd be just astonished at what came out of his mouth. Just astonished. And probably shocked and appalled. But that's the point I'm trying to make. Things were much healthier back then. They were much, much healthier. Before everybody got super sensitive and everyone had to walk on eggshells, you just did it. I've heard people say a lot of that was due to the Greatest Generation because they all had prejudices and then they get stuck in a platoon and they're all under artillery fire, and you got a guy from Texas and you got an Italian guy from the Bronx, and you got a Jew from San Francisco, and you got all of these things together, and they're saying well, that's what you get for getting shot, you stupid Mick. And then the guy'd run into artillery fire and pick this guy up and carry him out of combat and maybe get shot in the back doing it. And all of these terms got to be terms of endearment because they understood how ridiculous the whole thing was. Yeah, so Dave says Carson came of an age in a time when we wave the flag and Kimmel emerges from a culture that burns it. That flag burning happened a lot earlier than Jimmy Kimmel. It started before Kimmel was born, I want to say. I remember in the 60s when they started with this stuff, and it's just like, it's a shame, and it's really a shame because it was really cool to be able to make fun of each other and to be able to laugh at it and have fun with it, rather than this perpetual hypervigilance in order to inflate our own self-importance and how unbelievably virtuous we are. Where would the world be without white liberals to save everybody? Where would black people be? Where would brown people be? Where would Mexicans or immigrants be if it weren't for white liberals to save them from themselves? So it is the most prejudicial philosophy in the world today. Is white liberalism. They just reek of it, reek of it. We're here to stamp out white supremacy, says the white person, because the people of color can't do that on their own. You see how that works? I've got to use my white supremacy to stamp out white supremacy. You're welcome. Pathetic. Yeah, critical theory and all that stuff. So anyway, my voice is about cooked here, and 6:50. Is that 3.5 hours? That's a long show. Yes, sir. Another 3-hour tour. Okay, so I want to call it a night here, and like to thank our members for keeping things going, and we are all. We're all in this together. But thanks especially to our members, and I'll be here Thursday, but not next Monday. No, we're just going to cancel that show that week. I'll be back by next Thursday. So all of you stuck around. Thanks for the energetic argument at the beginning about 9/11. It's nice that we can talk about these things and not get our hair on fire. Oh, we just missed a super chat. Don't want to miss a super chat. Mod North, thank you for taking my comments. I haven't been able to catch up much with your work. I used to watch a lot during 20 to 23. Life got busy. It sure did. And we're all planning on coming back. So thanks very much for being with us. And we will say goodbye one at a time here. But we will see you guys on Thursday for your Stratosphere Lounge. Hang on, YouTube. Here we go. Where'd I put it? There it is. Okay. See you guys.